should be. He's here.
He just stepped out.
Definitely. Scott's good. We don't have a recording straight.
Yes.
Oh, we did. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, just want to make sure we get everybody in the room that needs to be here. There's Commissioner Jordan. Very good. Okay, well, welcome everyone to our October 17th, 2023, 9 a.m. board briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner French is on Zoom with us. And we will get started with Mike Burgess. And I think Jeff Morris, you're part of that. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, commissioners, and truth be told, I think you're going to be working a little more with Jeff today because I know he's got the agenda, and I think I'll just be more here as a resource to answer questions and chime in when I need to.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So the one that is in your packet is no longer current. I believe I did send this to Ron last night, although I just updated it 5 minutes ago, so that one's not even current. But we can still just go through it. Ron, yours will be current until transportation. Those were the updates that came in this morning. So the top on number 2 in the obnoxiously bright yellow is we'd look for some additional, or you requested some additional info around fire relief, fire response. Burgess did find a bill that passed last session that covers A through D on the bullet points there. Can you speak to this one a bit more, Mike?
Yeah, no, well, commissioners, there was that bill, and then there was another one 2 years ago. So this one was passed in 23. There was one passed in 21. The one in 21, as I understand it, is a lot more about what I'd call traditional forests. Whereas this one that was referenced in 23 got more into the wildfire and dealt more with what you all have been dealing with. Having said that, though, it's a lot of planning dollars. It's a lot of what I'd almost call research. There's a part in this one last year, this evacuation plan development, where that work would be done with cities and counties on safe, getting people out safe and things like that. But I don't think there was a lot there on some of the themes I've heard from you in terms of land use potentially, and then other dollars to access. The bill, as I understand it, seemed more preventative, if that's the right way to say that. But I'm not thorough in that bill, mind you. That's based on some things I read. I read the bill yesterday, read through the fiscal note and some things like that, and found that information. But I don't know that bill, if I were in your shoes, that bill's passage would not negate some of the other themes I've heard from you that you'd want to ask for. Does that make sense?
So this is what has been found. Above the yellow is our original language. Do you guys want a more specific request?
I'm sure. So I did reach out to Chandra about, I know she's chair or very involved in the state emergency management, organizations. And she said they've just started to have conversations about their, legislative agenda items. And if you remember, the individual assistance account at the state needs to be replenished. So that could be an important, that the legislature put some funds into that individual assistance. Or I guess it wasn't even, I think it was created.
It can be for anything.
It was created, but it didn't have any.
The governor's assistance account. I think it can be individual or other.
And then she said also something to consider would be Washington State. I think we've talked about this. Washington State creating its own public assistance account similar to FEMA's that could help address public assistance issues. Until and then when FEMA adjusts its guidelines and till we can get some federal changes around, having wildfires be addressed
Equal to
differently.
hurricanes and typhoons and.
So those are just some things she said that they have started to discuss with the emergency management leaders across the state. So definitely it seems like since there is an individual assistance account, like putting some funds into that would be an easy ask. You can always ask. But she said, the development of a public assistance account is also something to consider. So those are just two suggestions from when I reached out to Chandra.
So is there support for asking the governor's emergency account to be replenished? Heard one, see a second.
I'll just second that when I visited or went to the Red Cross last week with Governor Inslee, I think he said I exhausted the last penny of my emergency account on this disaster, so I think that'd be a natural one to increase.
And I guess the question is, what else can he do with that?
I believe it's 5 million a biennium.
And if it's his,
My understanding from things that were said during our fires, and I think Burgess will correct me if I'm wrong, it's 500 a biennium. Historically, at least there was one precedence up in Whatcom County after a major flood that zeroed it out, that it was replenished in the short session for the rest of the biennium. Is that accurate, Burgess, to your memory?
Did you say 500 million though, Jeff?
5 million.
5 million. I would say 500 seemed high. Yeah, I don't know the exact dollar amount. Commissioners, I'm thinking, is there a way to say that you would support funding for disaster relief accounts, including and mention the governor's, but not limited to, and then that way you've got the ability to, if this public fund, as you're mentioning, Commissioner Waldorf, comes up, that fits under that, that would fit under your agenda item. Because, so I would, if you just worded it, support disaster relief accounts, including but not limited to, and that kind of gives you, an opening to talk about a broad number of accounts and some that might show up this session.
We have, looks like I'm seeing some heads nodding here.
yeah, I think that would be a better
That's
way
good wording.
to word it. 'Cause I guess I just want to make sure it's for disaster recovery
Yes.
is the question that I didn't know that his
An
account.
account that I was referencing, my understanding was it was limited to declared emergencies.
Okay. That's all I
I'll
wanted.
double check that.
Yes. Commissioner French.
The other thing that we might want to, and I don't know whether this would be the right session, but at least start planting the seed around some kind of state-supported casualty insurance program. The states of Florida and some other states, Texas and stuff, have ended up having to create some kind of a funding mechanism because the casualty insurance companies started to pull out. And we've already started to hear that some of the casualty insurance companies in the state of Washington are going to exclude wildfire. I would not be surprised to see them also exclude the potential for earthquakes. So in the absence of private sector insurance, does there rise a need for the state to do something with regard to a supplemental insurance program? I don't know. We're at the threshold of that, but based upon what's happened in other states, it looks like it's going to become inevitable for us to have to deal with this at some time. And maybe this is the cycle where we at least start the conversation. They won't do anything this year, but maybe we start the conversation so that a couple of years out, there's some kind of program to help folks, especially, like in Medical Lake. I mean, I know that the legislature says, well, if you live in the urban area or a rural area, that's a risk you take. Well, wait a minute, people lived in Medical Lake, that's an urban area, and that also was exposed. So just food for thought in terms of, laying the foundation for future conversations. Thank you.
Others interested in that one also?
I know for me, it's like trying to see what, it's a worthy conversation to start, to see, I don't know what the need is at this point, or having the state insurance commissioner, where would that fall, and just, but it's a conversation we're starting out in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with you, Madam Chair. It's a starter of a conversation. There's no ask because they haven't wrapped their heads around this yet, but they are aware that it's coming because they've already funded a wildlife interface study. And so that's underway now so that they know that it's coming. But and if this is a cycle that's too early, that's fine. I'm just planting a seed is all I'm doing. Thank you.
Can I throw out a thought here? Last week we moved a bunch of things to letters of support. Would this be something that makes sense to send a letter to the insurance commissioner to get thoughts on and kind of start a conversation and see what they're thinking?
Or Al, is it LSC, and Mike, you know, you might know better too, is LSC kind of a better place to just start the conversation, kind of get it on the long list of WASAC items?
You know, that's a good suggestion. I can certainly raise that issue next week or next month and see if, because I know that I've had sidebar conversations with, you know, like Amanda McKinney at Yakima and the folks up in, you know, Okanagan County and stuff. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to float it at LSC and see where we go with there.
Okay, because I think it'd be, you know, it's going to be better collectively from the counties, you know, that are impacted.
Yep, no argument. Okay.
There we go.
So then the next thing I want to point out on the first page is the Blake decision is no longer there. Mike Burgess suggested yesterday that there was the fix last year. People can certainly debate whether it was the perfect fix or not, but the thought was there's probably not going to be another fix this year. So Mike and I decided to remove it based on that, unless we're told to put it back in.
I think the other part of that, commissioners, is the funding was provided to catch up with the backlog of cases that your court system might be dealing with. You might get disagreement from your court system that it was enough funding or that the timeline was fast enough. I don't know that to be the case. I'm just throwing that out there. But the political reality is I think the legislature feels like it's dealt with that issue during the biennial budget year. And I don't think it'd be timely to reference it this year. That's my advice to you.
So can I take silence as agreement? I'm going to take silence as agreement unless I hear verbal.
Lack of objection.
Okay, so that should be all of page 1. Top of page 2, combined with the bottom of page 1, 5 and 6. Last week, you guys had discussion around the natural gas and its possible ban issue. So what I did was I heard to separate them. So 5 is not changed. The language that was proposed as an alternate, I removed the natural gas part since it was covered in 5, left the other parts of it and created a new 6. So this is just me making an attempt at bringing together lack of unity last week around this. So feedback.
Sorry, Chris. So I think as it stands like this, I think it's this is one of those that legislative agenda is to be asking for things we need or we want changes made to. This is the state's already doing. And I don't know that I'm in for expanding more than what they're doing at this point in time. So that's just a me personal opinion. And I think just as we look at the list, it's more of a kind of an aspirational kind of ask instead of a real ask. So.
Well, could you combine number 7 with it though, such as whether it's timing, more time to meet or more dollars to meet the standards and goals? I don't know, just a thought. Because that is pretty specific, the energy standards.
And we would like them to pay for it if they're gonna require it.
That's kind of my point.
And I was honestly focused on 5 and 6 and didn't bring 7 into my thought process. But
Is there another
Wow.
example, a specific example of a financial incentive, you know, that didn't get passed that we want to support, or like some funding
Let's see,
for local counties?
and the capital budget request, we've got the health district building, which we're asking for money because of it as well. Mr. French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So at the Building Code Council, while I was on it, the council did not deal with any funding implications with regard to their request. All they did is say, "Thou shalt," and not only impose the requirement, but also impose the cost onto, you know, both the private sector and local jurisdictions and stuff. It just, you know, in my mind, this falls again into that unfunded mandate kind of a discussion where, you know, the state is imposing this requirement on local jurisdictions and other, you know, schools and fire stations and everybody else, and yet they've provided no mechanism to fund it. So I'd rather get rid of the requirement than and then create a new tax to try and fund a program that, you know, is as much politically driven as anything else and stuff. So anyway, just a little background for you.
Well, I'll raise my hand, or my finger.
Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking that an example on the federal level would be the Inflation Reduction Act had a number of tax credits and benefits in it to help pay for some of these things. And I think we heard, you know, I think Public Works is working on trying to take advantage of some grant money for solar, for example. So that was my point. I already, I think, spoke to last time that I would like it to be combined with 5. I personally like if it keeps to address climate change in there as a statement, which I did kind of pull out of an old GSI agenda, but I understand if I'm outvoted on that.
I mean, we can look at how to reintegrate so it makes, you know, more sense. It just doesn't make sense separately. I see what you're trying to say. So I don't know if we work on that.
work on it in what direction?
I mean, the thing with the natural gas prohibition legislation is, I mean, that's critical to be specific about, in my mind. Just because it is, especially for the east side of the state, it's an issue that they're not addressing. And at the Building Code Council, we don't know exactly what, you know, how long does it continue to get deferred, or what lawsuits are. So I think, you know, we've been pretty vocal, as the 3 commissioners before, on just keeping that on the forefront. So however we would like to combine or look at 5, 6, 7, and even, you know, tie in, you know, the health district stuff. I don't know exactly how to do that, so I'm just gonna think of what's
So-
another way to come back and see if we like it or not.
So what I feel like I'm hearing is there is majority support for 5 to stay by itself. You want me to take a stab at combining 6 and 7?
Yeah, I like 5 the way it's written.
That was based on last week's conversation, I'm sorry. Do we want to take a stab at kind of working 6 and 7 together? I like the idea of bringing in the health district, but that is a specific capital request, so I think we should stay in the capital request section, although we could allude to it up here. Is that a direction that makes sense?
Excuse me.
Mike, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that is your concern over merging the points?
Well, no, we could look at merging the points, but it's still one, how do we look at that? You know, because with the building code standard is kind of saying, if you're gonna infringe these on us, then, you know, you should help pay for them. You know, but as Commissioner French says, that another tax that's gonna be imposed on people to then, you know, help. You know, but we know the natural gas is one of the things we want to continue to keep in the forefront, to say we don't agree with that. We think people
Yeah, I don't think
need that opportunity.
I don't think there's a problem merging them. It's just the way that you write it is what matters. If you call out the 2 points separately, which sounds like you're doing, I think that works. But that obviously means that as a board, you support both of the points that are being made. Or if there's more than 2 points in it, but if you all support the content of that, then I think it works, whether you separate them or keep them together.
Commissioner French?
No, just an idea to float. What would happen if we tied item 7 and maybe, you know, now we're going back to Chris Jordan's suggestion, if we tied funding to make those improvements to the carbon tax and said, you know, the state should provide funding from the carbon tax to assist local jurisdictions in compliance with House Bill 1257. And that way it says, hey, it's your legislation, you know, you help pay for it. That I just throw that as an idea out as maybe a possible funding source for that. I don't think the legislature is going to get rid of it. I don't think the legislature, you know, I don't think they fully are aware of the cost implications for the state. Like I said, one university is going to be 600 million, and those dollars were 3 years old now. So, I mean, they're looking at multi-billion dollars to try and just get the state in compliance, much less all the other county buildings and stuff. Just a thought.
It sounds like that would be a kind of combining of 6 and 7 in some way, right?
We can work on that.
So I'm open to that.
That's direction I can work
You
on.
want to take a stab at it?
Sure.
Okay, that'll help Jeff.
So
Instead of Jeff trying to read your mind.
Take us down.
I prefer to give Jeff assignments.
I'm happy to
Feels
go
a-
first
feels a little
draft and send it
backwards
to you,
now.
but-
Does it help it to put a dollar amount in there as it relates to the county?
I think so.
As we've estimated right now, we haven't went, I think right now we're going, is it 50 to, no, over 80,000 square feet, I believe, over 70,000 square feet. We haven't gotten down to those next ones yet, but at least initially we have somewhat of an idea of what it would cost, what it may cost us. We'll learn more when we do the investment grade audit.
My only question is whether that's premature without the audit done, if we think it may reduce costs as well. Is that a real accurate number to share at this point?
It definitely could change, but I think it's pretty, I mean, if we've got an estimate based on what we feel the path to compliance is, the investment grade audit could come in and say, there's a couple of other things that you might consider as well. It could change the dollars. I don't know if it'll change it. If we're talking 15 million, I don't know if it's going to change it down to 5 million or 25 million.
Even with whatever savings in the future they are, it's still a hard cost that we've got to come up with today.
Right, it's the upfront cost.
Yes.
Not the long-term
Right.
net.
I believe the
And I
health
think this-
district building audit is done, and so maybe we could use that as an example.
Talk to Lola Phillips.
I just know with their ARP funds that they were awarded, we were told they just got the audit done, so they'll be coming forward with some things, that's what that's good.
I mean, that's the thing, it's like, I mean, we could have the future cost savings, but the legislature, my understanding, they're trying to do it for climate change more so than with the future cost savings are. So it's more to have the energy efficiency and all of that, so we're using less energy on the grid. And which comes with a actual cost of today.
We'll work on that. Down to number 9, Commissioner Waldrop, you were gonna do some conversation.
I did,
Just a second, Commissioner
I'm sorry.
French?
Yeah, so I was hoping that maybe we would hit 8 before 9. I don't know, that's just the way my mind works. But I was wondering, in the homeless response, what would your reaction be to support state investments to alleviate the impacts of homelessness on county residents and not just limited to housing? Because you've got mental health, you've got other therapy, don't we want a broad range of investments from the state to help as opposed to just housing? A question.
Well, and I would say, based on, what our discussion was yesterday with the homeless, homeless authority and Empire, and the specific contracts that are coming from Commerce, that we're not super excited that Commerce is letting us make decisions in our own community. I'm not even sure what I want to say for that one. Because I don't want the state actually doing more. If they're making the investments to let us make those decisions, which this doesn't really say, then I'm in support of it. But if they're gonna make decisions at the state level, that is gonna just be a broad sweeping on the community, but we're not having those discussions. Because even just, over at VOA yesterday, talking to Fawn, and she and I are gonna be getting together here soon. I mean, I just told her I have lots of questions, and she agreed that there's just lots of questions on how dollars are coming in and being spent without having it be part of the local government being part of it. So, Mr. French.
Yeah, great point. I support you 100% in that. I'd rather have it being driven at the local level than at the state level. Thank you.
And a third head on that.
So it's like, I mean, I'm happy to ask for state investments in it, but still letting the
Those make our
local.
plans here.
Yes.
Got a head nod, Commissioner French?
Yeah, no, it sounds, I mean, so
Strong coordination.
we need to, that number 8 needs to be a little more reworked. I think we all agree on that, so, but yeah, I like the direction.
You know, that way I can talk to Justin Johnson for thoughts too around holistic.
Yeah, maybe you could put language like in collaboration with or something like that, so that it's a together you fund. I think the legislature has the right to set some priorities as well, right? They're elected officials, but the key is the collaboration, I think. So that would just be a suggestion.
We'll see what Jeff comes up.
Well, but then, well,
So like holistic response in collaboration with local jurisdictions, those types of.
Well, even in collaboration, I mean, that latest grant was supposed to be in collaboration, but it wasn't. So, I mean, that's what I'm just after that, I'm just kind of a little concerned in how we worded things.
they would probably say it was collaboration. You get to suggest how 10% of the money is distributed.
I don't know, that's.
Well, we will rework that and
Right.
see if we get
Or,
it closer. next
Since it's not a specific ask, I mean, does it need to be there? I mean, I think, and Mike, correct me, but I mean, we really want to target the things that we think are really important that we can ask, that we can potentially get passed or get funding for, or that kind of thing. Versus, this is more aspirational, I think.
Yeah, this isn't a philosophical document.
Yeah,
This is what we want and need.
Yeah.
In
I
my-
think as we all go talk to our legislators, because everyone, talks to legislatures at different levels and stuff. I mean, it certainly can be something we can talk about, but I think as we come together as the 5 of us to say, these are what we support as Spokane County to get accomplished this legislative season. I don't know that that's gonna be a priority for the state. the legislature, I would say. Yeah, because it's a supplemental year, so it's not a big year for,
A good year for additional money.
Can you remind me, what did we have for homelessness in the 2023 ledge agenda? Is this the
That's
language?
it.
That is the
Those
same
15
language.
words, give or take.
That is the same language, okay.
which we really, none of us really talked about it or any of that. So I mean, so that's where it's like, I feel like, kind of like what WASAC has done, we're really prioritizing what do we really want to accomplish this legislative cycle.
And maybe it could be combined with 9 as we get
Yeah,
more info around
that's-
it.
I could see. Trying to combine those two.
Slowly move us forward.
Okay, combine. Let's-
So if we're
let's
talking
attempt to combine
9, Commissioner Waldron.
So yes.
Consolidation.
I did reach out to Deb Elzinga with Community Frameworks, and I still would like to chat with someone at the Housing Authority too. And I was just picking her brain about funding sources, flexibility, like what are the needs, and obviously with home ownership, the gap has only grown for people because of the interest rates right now. So, the opportunity for the Housing Trust Fund can be used to buy down, to lower down payments, to help people get loans. It's just a tough time, right, to get people into home ownership. But I mean, actually, she discussed more around like our local dollars. She had more ideas around maybe some of our county recording fees and the sales tax, that we get to keep, and ideas of how that could be leveraged with the state housing trust fund dollars. So she gave me more ideas about local funds and how the county might be able to leverage what the state already has. So I didn't get a lot of specific policy but obviously the Housing Trust Fund continues to be a big source of funds. It's
probably the
just
biggest.
the challenge is sometimes there's very strict limitations on how you can use it, and the applications are, she said, like they just put in an application and it takes months and months and months because it's just very competitive and specific, how the dollars can be used. So her comment was more like with the county local funds that we have that we've been collecting from the recording fees and the sales tax, we could think about how we can make those more flexible to fill in gaps, right? That a lot of the state funds are very prescriptive is what I got from her. So I didn't get anything, sorry, I'll keep digging around. I'll make a few more calls, but the big home ownership challenge is that interest rates has gone up, so the costs of the mortgages have gone up, and the cost of the down payments have gone up, and so the gap is even larger for like subsidies.
I can check in with George, he might have some thoughts.
I'll circle back one more time for next week.
10, the ball is in the sheriff's court, have not heard back. Mike Burgess got the info on under number 11. So I guess a question of the board, do we want this does the helicopter request become a capital request? Burgess has done
The
some.
other commissioners on that too, there might be some constraints on that too, in terms of being a capital budget request. Capital budget requests, the items usually have a useful life beyond 13 years or beyond, which I assume the helicopter would, so there's that. But there are some things in some of the guidelines that talk about purchasing equipment and things like that are not necessarily capital budget requests. But then having said that, if you look through the capital budget community project list over the years, there are certainly projects that would get into the gray area of whether or not it's equipment. The other part of that too is I do have a call into a colleague of mine that specifically works in the law enforcement area. I wonder if there aren't some grant monies available for this type of thing But he's traveling, so he and I did not connect last week. He's out the rest of this week, so just some background information there. But I think at the end of the day, if as a board that you agree that you want the helicopter request to be one of your requests, then you'd be directing me to go forward and go find the money for it wherever the appropriate spot is. I'm comfortable doing that. Just wanted to give you that background. Just out of curiosity, do we know how much it would be?
$2 million, because I think that's what's on our capital,
Say that number again.
2 million, that's what it is on our,
2 million, it does, based on what we know with grant funding that's been secured and an estimate of a disposition, surplus proceeds from the other helicopter, that could flux based on when we actually surplus it, what other grants we get, but I think that's a good starting point right now.
which you would lay out, just like they laid out for us in the capital request. You've got to show what you're doing and how you're doing it, so it's not just all in the state. So I'm still happy to request. And then, still kind of move forward and see. I mean, I think, Mike, though, if there's other grant opportunities out there, I mean, I think that would be great. I mean, because definitely, for us, it's, it's not just law enforcement, it's search and rescue and all those other things that that are advantageous to the region, not just Spokane County.
Understood.
Commissioner, I wonder if we could get letters of support from some of the other counties that rely on it or benefit from it. I know Sheriff Knowles has shared some of those, thank you letters and notes with us, just as a way to show that it is a regional issue.
And I would think we'd be able to get the Valley to support it as well, since they would be potentially helping with the cost of it on the long-term side.
Well, and to Commissioner Jordan's point, I mean, with the surrounding areas, the people who have been helped by our air team, by our helicopters, I mean, that covers a whole lot of legislative districts and a whole lot of legislators that we can make that pitch to hopefully kind of help in carrying that message for us.
Well, and even just the rescues that were occurring during the fire out of the lake, medical lake area, helping it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a real regional asset to have. And so, yeah, I think the more we can.
Yeah, a lot of search and rescues, all, not just in Spokane County, but neighboring counties. And so I mean, that bring in the 7th district, the 9th, maybe the 13th. I mean, if we've done some stuff more toward central Washington, it's a lot of folks to get on board.
Yeah.
Say it's not just a Spokane County asset, it's a regional. So.
Yeah, I don't know what we request in funds back or not. I don't know what we've done, so yeah.
No, I'm just saying that we have that direct connection to a lot of other legislators, not just our Spokane County legislators, because it's helped a lot of folks in neighboring counties as well.
So adding the helicopter to the other 3 items, 3, 4, and 5 under capital budget, how would you guys feel about doing some prioritization?
I was gonna ask, before we do that, if maybe the sheriff's office could be asked to inquire with other counties that they've helped, if they'd be interested in sending letters or something like that. Just an idea.
Connect with the sheriff.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, I mean, I guess I thought we had already, letters of support of the other groups.
And we don't need those for this document, those would be more as we're lobbying the legislators directly.
Well,
Send them in, but
actually,
it's-
no, what you do want is you do want those letters of support to go behind the capital request. So I think, at least that's what I found with the Doris Morrison Learning Center, that we had them up front as we're asking for the money. So.
Agreed. I was just saying, we do have some time between now and January 1 to track it
Yes.
down.
Yes, we do, sorry.
I was thinking trying to get us past those documents in the next 50 days.
Jeff, are you just focused on this document?
Right now I am, that's my duty task
Well, if we
assignment.
finish it, you won't have anything else to do.
If that were only true. That a promise? So back to the priority question, in capital budgets, everybody had agreement on it would be smart to have a top request, no more than 2 is what I believe I heard. We have yet to have the discussion on which item would be that premier request.
For capital.
For capital. Or is there some other request that's not on this list that's entering your mind that we should be adding to the list?
I would say it's either gotta be Fairchild or it's gotta be the health district. I mean, Shrek has a revenue stream. It's just, all this would do was sort of speed up the process, but they have a revenue stream, so I don't think it would be smart to put them as number 1 over 2 other.
Remember the
Masters that
helicopter's
don't
gonna come
have.
here too.
Oh,
So the helicopter will
yes.
be moving down, so you have the helicopter plus these 3.
yes, so. Still what I say, I don't think it should be Shrek. They have a dedicated revenue stream. Health district
Helps.
falls to us, I mean, at the end of the day.
To me, the health district has a little bit more strength in it that we have allocated ARP for part of it, so we do have skin in the game. We're asking for them to come alongside, something we've already done.
Commissioner French?
Yes, with regard to the Fairchild, I met last week with the folks from Habitat for Humanity, and they indicate that the Campbell Mobile Home Park could be up for sale here fairly soon, that they are removing mobile homes by acquisition out of that park now, and at some point the revenue stream is going to be such, and we don't have any money to acquire that park and stuff. So even if it comes on the market, we don't have any revenue to be able to execute a purchase sale agreement with them. So that just from just giving you an update of what the status is, and, you know, agree with Commissioner Kearns. I mean, that one is one that the state has funded. It's a low lift. I mean, $2.5–3 million would probably be all it need in this ask. So I just, by way of information, thank you.
So I will, unless someone tells me otherwise, I will move Shrek to number 5, or whatever number it ends up becoming towards the end. Between helicopter, Fairchild, and health district.
So my ranking would be the helicopter, the health district, Fairchild, and then Shrek. That'd be my ranking.
Okay.
Because Al, didn't the funds for the mobile home stuff come out of a separate? I didn't think that was out of the capital.
You raise a good point. I think it was a direct allocation and not necessarily out of capital, because it was, so you could make the argument that, you know, we make a separate request from the legislature to continue the funding to protect Fairchild and not make it a capital request.
Make it more like the governor's disaster account, ask for a,
And commissioners, it's been both over the years, but you are correct that this last round was operating.
Okay. So Mike,
So
what do you think?
I mean, I think again, commissioners, you know, you make these requests, you know, in a specific request in a general way. You know, if I were in your shoes, it wouldn't matter to me where the money came from, as long, you know, if you get your projects funded. But some of them are much more typically capital as opposed to others, whereas this Air Force Base issue has shown a history that it has come out of the operating budget. So I think if it were me, I would word it continued support for Fairchild Air Force Base, whatever the verbiage there was, is the way I would word that. And that way you're covering your bases to be either operating or capital, whereas some of these other projects are much more specifically capital in addition to, say, specifically transportation.
Can I clarify? So the health district, where it says invested 1.3 million, that's out of ARPA.
Correct.
Yes.
So initial estimates indicate 7.5 million. So you're saying that is that general fund money that would come out of, or what would be the funding package for that if there was no state funding?
It's trying to have the health district pay for what they can, kind of like an enterprise fund that they are. Because they're their own separate entity. So seeing what I think they've got some additional funds they're gonna put towards it this year, but they don't have a big enough fund balance or reserve to just put towards it. So yes, so eventually it does fall on us when they can't be the
That was one of our, we pushed pretty hard on that one last year.
Commissioner French?
No, like,
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for historical perspective, the county used to own the health district. And there was a substantial amount of deferred maintenance that was being accrued. And so we entered into an agreement where we would transfer the ownership of the health district building to the health district. And then they would pick up through grants and other sources of funding, money to be able to pay for deferred maintenance and the upkeep of the building. And so that was the original intent when we transferred the building to the health district. That hasn't materialized. The grant money to pay for maintaining the building has not materialized the way that it was anticipated. So that's why it's kind of now come back onto our table. But just from a historical perspective, that's kind of how we got to where we're at.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, because we did transfer, I think back in 2015 was when it was transferred to the health district itself. Because I just started the auditor's office. It's like one of those financial transactions of trying to figure out how to record it.
I knew it was before my time here, but I thought it was way earlier than that. I didn't think it was that recent. I thought it was
No.
quite a ways back.
Al, do you remember? So my memory is 2015, because that was when I was chief deputy auditor and in financial services. We were trying to figure out how to account for it.
Yeah, I think we actually agreed to it back when Mark Richard was still one of the commissioners and stuff. So when we actually consummated the deal and when we originally made the deal, they could have been years apart. Because you're right, there was a challenge in terms of how do we do this now? Because there wasn't any cash exchange for the transfer. It was just kind of, if you will, a quick claim deed. Well, you can't do that in government.
I think it was $1. There was an exchange of $1. I think.
$1.
And I remember contributing to that.
Exactly.
We've at least moved Shrek to its spot on the line. Let's keep moving forward because I'm so far over your time right now. Transportation, just a quick, still working with Kyle's team and Matt Zaracore. They'll get us the info to separate out the number 1. Number 6, I updated based on the one page we used last year when we were working on it that Commissioner Kearns presented last week. Carl over at STA will be providing us some language for consideration on the Division Connects project and the preservation funding. Maybe I printed the wrong thing off here. I had new language on preservation funding from them this morning that I don't think got put in there. But the question could be around preservation funding. Do you want to be a direct request? They suggested, does that say 4 point? Okay, I just don't have the copy of this up there. You can do the direct request for 4.5 million. Another way would be to ask them to reduce the matching that we have to pay when they give us the matching requirement. And then, we would show somehow that savings to the county goes to preservation. Just a couple different ways to peel the apple that Kyle and I talked about. But the language up there that hopefully matches your sheet, it doesn't match mine. And then there's also new language up there on the Wall Street. The dollar amount, I think, only shifted $100,000, but they did give some new language up there.
Okay, Commissioner French?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I would suggest taking 7 off of the list. One, it's not our project, it's STA's, and we can handle that through a letter of support. But now that FTA has allowed STA to enter into preliminary engineering, I mean, that 50 million that the state's already allocated is probably going to cover our contribution to that for a federal match. So I think that's more of a letter of support than it is part of our ask.
Agreement around letter of support? Yes. Okay, I will move that to my letter of support column. Hopefully their wording that they give us will be a good basis for that letter of support. So 1 through 9, back to another priority exercise. Are there any that you want to move to the top or at least move to the bottom that we can start getting rearranged?
So I think we probably need to look at the SRTC list as well, because I know some of these are not there, and I know that's going to be one of the things, but Commissioner French.
Yeah, so the only input I'd offer on this one is that with regard to the Four Lakes interchange, that is a project that both we've got federal assistance and money in, as well as the state legislature has already approved it once. So I fully expect that they will approve that again. And so since we've got 2 of the 3 already shaking their head yes, I'm thinking that that's probably one that should stay on the list and not at the top of the list.
I will
votes.
I will make a selfish pitch for the North Hatch. Again, but I think one of the things, if we have such a high dollar amount item with the Four Lakes interchange at 34 million, we should also have a low dollar amount one near the top too. So if there is just a small amount of money, folks can look and see something low dollar as well. So I'd rather get something than nothing. So if we're gonna have a big dollar one up top, we should probably have a low dollar one up there right behind it. So.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, so that dollar amount on number 1 is supposed to be adjusted downward.
We're working on that, Commissioner.
That?
Yes, they're working on that.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to provide some balance here. It's not a $34 million ask anymore. It's closer to about a $10 to $12 million ask.
Kyle, do you have any, based on other grants coming in, input on this?
That number?
No, just in general, do you have any knowledge of maybe other funds coming that would, from a staff perspective, make sense to move something upward or downward?
I think just for consideration of the commissioners, I mean, just putting a little realism on this, there's certain projects, I mean, this is certainly, this is a long-range project. When you think about that, a project like Hatch would be a little bit more delivering quickly. Argonne and Upriver is really one of our biggest needs, but that's going to take a while. We have a lot of real estate to buy to open that up. It's a choke point. It's a huge issue. The only other thing with that one is lining up with the Millwood work. So it would be nice to get moving on that and actually start making progress, because I don't think that corridor is going to be any healthier until we do our part. But unfortunately, because of the real estate we have to buy, it's a many years project. So the sooner we start, the better. But we can't get started we haven't had any funds allocated towards that. I mean, personally, it's not sexy, I'm on preservation. I want to take care of things, but I understand that's not the sexiest of asks, and these are, critical. And then the corridors are, we got to keep swinging on those. They're going to take a long time to get to the finish line, but those are the next two important corridors we need to get working on.
Commissioner, sorry, I have a 10 o'clock that I need to get to. So appreciate the process you're going through. I think it's a good process, and I will see you there next week. I'll be in town.
Thank you.
Kyle, for the Argonne upriver, is there a way to chunk that out a little bit, like for what the right-of-way cost is versus some of the other, the 6.5 that includes the right-of-way cost?
Yeah, and there's another ask though. We're in a different funding source. I wouldn't recommend it into the ledge ask, which is tied to the intersection here, which is the Centennial Trail crossing, and that's kind of its own thing. There's funding sources for that. That's probably more on the RCO side of the fence, not a ledge ask. But that's an 8-figure ask probably, because we're should probably swing for a bridge, and that's gonna be a real thing. It's kind of a cool idea. I really like what they came up for on that. But I think the 6.5 will get us the real estate and that. If we wanted to break that up, we certainly could. I'd be happy to look into that a little bit more.
What's the timing of the Millwood work that you were referring to?
Variable is how I would describe it.
They have right-of-way issues that they're
They also have to deal with.
they may have to do some eminent domain.
And that's the big thing with this whole corridor right here is no entity owns enough property to do what needs to be done out there. And so that's the long play. And unfortunately, you got to have some money in the bank to start that play so that you can actually start. I mean, we're likely in an eminent domain situation as well.
Everything was built very close to the road,
It
unfortunately.
really was. And just to get enough space, we're talking about multiple acquisitions.
I agree. I'd kind of like to look at SRTC and compare, so we're aligning with others as much as we can and kind of getting joint momentum. But I was going to ask Kyle, I don't know if we have time now to talk selfishly about Wall Street, what you think about the priority of that.
So the thing with Wall Street is that's actually, as we broke it off into 8.5 there, or 8.6, I think the number was, we probably need to spend 30 out on Wall Street. Because there's multiple pieces of that. There's 3 intersections that are going to fail out there. Country Homes, Cascade Way, and the Whitworth. And all of those though, those are good safety projects. Those are all probably about a couple $1 million each, and those are really good ones for us to apply for safety. Then we have another portion of it that would be more of a combined project with sewer, where we need to put a big portion of our redundant force main out of our most important sewer lift station. So I didn't include that because that's a really good match project. When sewer provides the match and then we get to go for road funding on top of it, then it doesn't affect the road fund hardly at all. So the preservation component's the one component that just frankly isn't going to score well in our other funding asks, which is why that was in there.
I think I've got plenty to do the next week. Should we
Yes.
move on?
Just a second, Commissioner French?
Yeah, so Kyle, one of the things you might want to include in both the Argonne and the Wall Street is some kind of bicycle element, because I know that TIB, which I sit on, is sitting on a ton of money for bicycles. And so if there's an opportunity to get tapped into any of that money, that might help that project as well.
Thanks, Al. Those are both looked at onto that. It's, I guess what we're looking, maybe we need to reference the bicycle component a little bit more, but one of the reasons some of those aren't included is just because we can apply for those other funds a little more readily than we can for the purposes that are listed up here.
So I would suggest that maybe, because I know our time between now and the end of the year is pretty tight, that in January, we have like a strategic planning session to really talk about what, you know, I know you guys are doing it, but I mean, to help us understand and also help us think of at SRTC or at the different boards that we're on, opportunities for us to be helping and thinking about it. Because I think we sometimes don't collaborate as the commissioners and public work, you know, roads, to figure out, you know, what the needs are, and what we could try to help with individually. Because I mean, I think, you know, for me, you know, there hasn't been I mean, I'm just gonna say, there hasn't been a lot in my district. So it's like, as I talk to constituents, they're like, our tax dollars are going to other districts, you know, and such. And so, you know, and I think we all have that same, you know, happening. And so I think we all, you know, it's better for us to all understand why this need is the highest need at this point in time, and kind of how we can help, as we're talking to our constituents, as to what we can do for the future, and be able to tell them, you know, that it's on the list, we're working towards it, we've got to figure out funding, you know, just those kinds of things. So we're all more abreast of that, and can help, you know, kind of with those discussions with our constituents.
Absolutely.
So
That'd be great.
I think that'd be a good, you know, just as, because we know this list isn't what our 6-year list is either. So I mean, so it's really trying to figure out how are we combining all those and really getting, you know, and like with SRTC and trying to have a regional list, you know, what does that really look like, and how do I advocate more to get it on SRTC's list?
Absolutely.
You know, those kinds of things. So I think it's having us all understand that would be helpful. Just knowing that we have all these different lists, and it's like, it's not all coming together. And, you know, and like I said, realizing that constituents also deserve, you know, a voice in some of it as well.
I agree. I think that'd be a great idea, especially, I mean, even the Glen Rose corridor, I think it hasn't been looked at for a while. Like, I think we need to relook at it now that we know about the Y project going in and other opportunities, just to think about where we would start with a project like that.
Well, and like the Y is a good example up there, that intersection's gonna fail with that.
Exactly.
So what do we?
Let's get ahead of it.
The Y do, or how do we figure that out?
And sometimes with these corridor style projects, I mean, it's a multi-year, multi-phase effort here, you know, I mean, we're a year and change out of, you know, Bigelow, and the Bigelow conversation probably started in
Since before the north-south corridor.
And but so as we look at, you know, Glen Rose, and there is this strategic component to it that the team has, you know, we've identified a corridor, and then it's starting to go, okay, well, which intersection is going to fail first? So when, you know, what is the priority for applying for those? You know, we get about 3 intersections a year is our average. Occasionally we'll get 2. So that's, and actually I'll be briefing on Tuesday about the Argonne Peon. And we'll, but so that's exactly a lot of it. Now, I just would, where I was trying to get with that is, I would really like to have our planning folks in the room for that conversation and help understand both how we're looking at these corridors, but also how we see the way the money is available to us, so that that's how we end up trying to break the projects out to accomplish the corridor goal and meet the funding program.
Commissioner French, and then we've got to get moving on our agenda.
Yeah, I just wanted to, from a historical perspective, Bigelow Gulch started in 1912. I was there.
See, before the north-south corridor.
Hey, you won't be on a hearse for that one, Al.
So more to come on that, but I think, yes, I mean, that's why having it as a strategic meeting to have really everybody in the room to help us all understand. So that'd be great. Okay.
Thank you. Here is mine.
Thank you. Yeah. Glad you made sense of all that, Jeff.
We'll come back with new words next week.
Now that we're at, that was only supposed to go till 9:15. We're at 10:05. but stuff that needed to happen. We are gonna be making some adjustments that we're gonna have to our calendar this morning. We're gonna have Chris Davis go next, since you've been waiting patiently this whole time. And then we are gonna move up H and K on the agenda to right after, so you're not gonna be back too long.
Good morning. Hopefully you can gain some ground. I'll be quick. I did have a PowerPoint. It just quickly outlines the agreement. Essentially, this is an agreement between Spokane County District Court and the Administrative Office of Courts. It's an agreement that's been in place in the past. Essentially, it's funding for the therapeutic courts so that District Court can basically break down the barriers of the costs associated with pretrial testing and therapy, essentially, for these individuals. So AOC is offering reimbursement. Next slide, please. Mainly focuses on behavioral health as well as substance use disorders. It went into effect actually in July, and we're going to be asking that the board ratify the agreement that was signed between Judge Smith and the representative from AOC. It began in July, it runs until June of 2024. Next slide, please. I did just a quick breakdown of where the money is or where it could go, but the total amount available to district court is roughly around $387,000 for this yearly agreement or annual agreement. Next slide, please. The areas of focus, so personnel, equipment, training, but most importantly, I think the lion's share is the treatment for the individuals in therapeutic court. And as I said, it's geared towards substance use disorder as well as behavioral disorders. Next slide, please. Are there any questions? I know that was very quick. I didn't go into the technical aspect of reporting. Please.
Oh, go ahead first.
I was just gonna ask, is this a grant that was applied for, or is it like an entitlement that's allocated out?
It's more of like it's just a reimbursement.
And how often have we had this grant in the past? I mean, I think we have, right?
That's a great question. I didn't get how many.
It's
how
not
many
a new
years.
grant.
No, it's not a new one.
So it's an ongoing, just so with personnel and stuff that it's
But
been
it,
covered through this grant.
yeah, my understanding is this isn't an amendment or an extension of a previously existing one. It's just basically one that comes before us every year. The funding sources, I think, are dependent upon the previous years, so that's why we enter into these new agreements with AOC.
I would say in the future when we come back, or maybe it's something, is there a way to get kind of how many people have been served over the past year from the grant?
Oh, yeah.
And what the outcomes have been?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that the therapeutic courts keep statistics on the amount of participants and kind of what treatments are being administered. So I'll definitely reach out to district court and see if they have those numbers for you.
Yeah, and just if they want to email them this time, but yeah, that would be great.
More than happy.
Just to know, as we talk about how many people are going through the system and getting the help that they need and those kinds of things would be great to see.
Okay. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a great morning.
Okay, so then that's gonna move us up H and K. So H is, the last, Josh isn't here. So I think it was last Tuesday, was it Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday? I don't know which day. Tuesday. That it ended up being just Commissioner Kearns and myself in the conference room for the last 45 minutes so we didn't have a quorum. And it's also not fair to staff to be coming in and we're, giving us information when there isn't a quorum. So we talked about a while back, if people are gonna be gone, to just let Scott know as we're setting the agenda. So the Wednesday before, between you and your assistants, I'm not gonna call the commissioners, between you and your assistants, if they can let Scott know if you've got a meeting, even at noon, that we've gotta be out you've got to be out by 11:45 or 11:30. Just so that way we can plan the agenda accordingly and know what we've gotten, don't have, because what isn't on the agenda is if we have executive sessions, which I don't always know about, you guys do more than as we set the agendas. So just so we can figure that out, that by Wednesday at noon, if you can let Scott know. I mean, I think that was the easiest, right? That's what we talked about last time, it's just having Scott know, so that way he can, as he and Gina kind of look at the timing before we go over the agendas, that would be helpful, so we don't have the situation where it's just the two of us in the conference room and not have a quorum. Because I mean, there's, I know GSI stuff meets, at noon, so I gotta leave at 11:30. So those things, just to give us that chance to adjust the schedule, or if you're gonna be on, there's something that you really want to be on the schedule, then we need to make sure it's up, where you're gonna be there for that part of the conversation, so just reiterating what we talked about, I think, a couple of months ago.
And my apologies, I had a few appointments that I have not timely informed you of, so my apologies.
No, and I know there's stuff that just comes up, but I mean, for the most part, we all usually know that Wednesday before, if there's a meeting that's gonna conflict with on Monday or Tuesday. So, but just on Mondays and Tuesdays with the agenda. Commissioner French.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the position that this puts you, Madam Chair, and Scott in. Hope you can appreciate that I don't have control of some of the stuff that's going on here and stuff, so I'll do my best to accommodate the schedule as much as I possibly can, to the extent that things are in my control.
And I understand that, Al. So I mean, it's more the scheduled meetings, because I think last Tuesday you had a scheduled meeting at 11 o'clock that you had to be at. And Commissioner Jordan had left at 10:30 and Commissioner Waldorf left at 11:30, and we ended up being here till I think 12:15. So it's really the scheduled meetings, which is why I say your assistants can also help out and just let Scott know if there's a scheduled meeting based on your calendars. So, but I understand life happens. People get sick, kids get sick, we get sick. So yes, so do not think that I understand your schedule, but just if it's a scheduled meeting, if we know, and just, same for me. I mean, I haven't always said to Scott when I have a GSI meeting at noon or another meeting at noon that I need to be out at 11:30. So it's on all of us.
Just fair enough.
Just putting it out there. Okay, and then we also wanted to talk about, we always did the pledge, as I've done some of the county visits, at the 5:30 meeting, but it was because it was the public hearing meeting. We moved it to 2 o'clocks, and so feeling like, are you guys okay if we start doing the pledge at the 2 o'clocks and just put it back on our agenda? Because it's our formal legislative meeting. Commissioner French.
Yes, we did that before COVID, and I'd like to be able to return to it. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
I'm good with that. I just wanted to let folks know I had a constituent ask me if we could add a land acknowledgement to our meeting, so I don't know if there's any interest in, I think the city council does something. I just wanted you to know I've gotten that request, but I'm fully supportive of adding the pledge.
We haven't done a land acknowledgement in the past, so I don't know about adding that at this point in time. But that would just be.
And I can talk to city council, what do they do, how did that come about, just for more background, but just wanted to put it out there.
I have an example of one that I use at the zone project that was developed by one of the Spokane school board members. So if you need an example, I have an example too.
I think the pledge would be a great idea.
We have 3 or 5 for the pledge.
Pledge is
Yes.
fine.
Split.
Five for
Starting the
pledge.
Let's do it.
We'll get it. So you'll
Start
add
us
that
off.
back to our agenda to start the meetings. Okay, and then rules of conduct and open public forums. So as we've had, as we've had more people coming for open public forum that are, it's like, what are our rules of engagement? Make sure we're aware of those and that those, we all agree with those. As well as then, if we're still okay with allocating our time, like I did note on our 5:30 hearing, decided not to allocate time at that meeting, as a choice of us for that meeting specifically. So I'm open to thoughts and ideas. I guess part of what we're not supposed to be letting people talk specifically. I don't know, do you have the contact? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, it's page 63 of your handout.
Page 63.
I think the one that you're referencing, Commissioner, is no person shall orally initiate charges or complaints against individual county employees at a public meeting of the board.
So that obviously has been happening where people have been calling out specific names of employees, and I think I did do the point of order last time where, once you say a person's name and say that they're lying, that's an allegation that I couldn't let that go. So I think it's just time to do a reset as to what do we think it should, be, and it is not just on the chair to call it out. I know Commissioner French, you've called it out before when we've been in meetings. When you haven't been the chair. So I think it's on all of us to hold people accountable and just do a point of order if we feel that it's not appropriate. As I told Chris Anderson that he's our parliamentarian for the meetings, so that's why I called the point of order and looked to him to provide that feedback as our attorney and as our parliamentarian. So I don't know, I guess I just like kind of a discussion as to what people think, but it's what we're seeing, and I just want to make sure that we're being cognizant and respectful to our staff. Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I thought you handled the meeting last week very well in terms of trying to make sure that there's no personal attacks. But I have been reluctant to call point of order like I have in the past, just out of respect for the chair and stuff. So if we do that, I hope that you don't take that as a personal affront or any kind of reflection on what you're doing. It's more to assist than it is to call attention to it. I guess I just don't want to be disrespectful to the chair in the process.
Thank you. I don't see it as disrespectful. I think as you know, we all hear, especially with 5 of us now up there, we're all going to hear something different. As you know, when people are talking, someone picks up a different word than somebody else. So I do not see it as a point of disrespect, and I hope anyone else sitting in as the chair would feel the same way. That I think it's on all of us to make the call out if you're so willing. Let's see, Chris, you kind of were raising your hand first.
I guess I'm just asking, for me, my concern is of being overly obviously I don't want people coming in making personal false attacks in meetings. I worry about where the line is from a free speech perspective. The right to petition your government is a fundamental right? So maybe, and I think frankly, personally, that it's appropriate for someone who thinks that agency or action of the county wronged them to be able to come down there and read us the riot act if they want to. Maybe the issue is just in the specific naming of individuals, not in the action. So maybe if they said the scraps director or something like that, I don't know if that would help. I'm just struggling with exactly what the line is while also not overly restricting free speech.
I agree. I think that's part of what we got to think of. Commissioner Waldorf and then Commissioner French.
It is a forum that the county provides, and we can set the rules around it. anyone can stand on a street corner or speak to the media and say whatever they want to say. So I do think it's important if we have rules that we enforce them, or else why do we have them? So, you know, I would be supportive, Madam Chair, if you needed to read the rules again, kind of say, hey, I've been kind of getting away from enforcing these, but now we're going to, you know, we're going to enforce these because it's the respectful thing to do, to not have people make direct attacks on other people. I mean, I guess I was used to those rules when I was on the Spokane City Council, the similar rule. You don't do direct attacks on individuals. I think you can still get your point across that you're upset about a particular county policy or county, how something's being implemented at the county. But I mean, I don't know the best way to go about it because we've kind of let it slide a little bit, but maybe it's time to kind of re-engage around the rules and just reiterate them. And if we want to change them, then we can change them. But right now, we do have rules of procedure that are up on the wall. And maybe, you know, later this year, we can review those like in a retreat format and decide if we want to make changes to them. But right now, I'm comfortable with enforcing the rules, and as Commissioner French said, as long as it's okay to do point of order, I'm happy to chime in on that if I feel like someone is overstepping. It might be helpful to have a copy of the rules at our seat, just so my eyes aren't very good to see what's up on the wall, but I know we can pull it up on our agendas as well, but I don't know if they're on the front of the agenda or anything like that, but
It used to be
something
on
to think about.
the back of the agenda, and what we may do is somebody, you know, I can state that we're gonna do a reset, which maybe next week I'll figure that out, how to put it in, or maybe I'll figure it out today. That we're gonna do kind of not a reset, but we're gonna, you know, institute the rules that we already have in place. And as somebody signs up to speak, you may want to hand them, when they hand you the yellow form, you hand them.
That would be a good idea.
Didn't they used to be printed on the backs of the
Yes.
yellow sheets? Is
No,
that
it
where
used to be on
they-
the back of the agendas,
is
I
the
thought.
agendas? For some reason, I thought it was the back of the yellow sheets when I first started, but
Or we had a separate page out there, when you picked up an agenda, you could pick up.
something.
It's posted, I mean, it's
Yeah,
posted
it's
on
on the
one
wall.
side, it's posted outside. And I think there are some sheets as well when you walk in the BOCC hearing room, but it also could be something that you show up on the screen as the opening to a public forum, so it's always right there as well.
Okay, but I think for today, let's just hand out the sheet if somebody turns in again. In to speak. Commissioner French, sorry.
Yeah, Commissioner Kearns, you're right. It used to be on the back, and that's when the list was a lot shorter. As the list has grown, but if you follow Robert's rules say that you can only speak to an issue, you cannot speak to a person either by name or position. And so, you know, while you can call out somebody by, you know, the director of, that's the same as calling them out by name and stuff. So it really is about the issue and not the person. So just additional information.
Thank you.
Might be helpful if you're gonna do a kind of expectation setting to remind members of the public that they can always write whatever they want to us. These rules are for the public forum.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And do we, as we do this kind of reset, I mean, do we want to look at timing too? People allocating their time, is there a certain limit? Or not, as people then choose to turn over their time. I mean, at the health district, Hafner, when we went to kind of the timed amount that was 15 minutes, that we didn't let people do that, but people would have like a prepared statement that one would read up to this point and the next person would read up to that point. I mean, so there's ways that they can still do that. You know, or do we limit it to just, you can only, you know, 6 6 minutes is the most, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know if people want to put anything on.
I don't know of any of my other boards that I sit on that have public forum. I don't think I've ever seen anybody bundle time, like we allow them to do, you know, bring 2 people with you, you take theirs, now you get 9 minutes instead of 3. I don't know if either of you, any of the ones you sit on, I don't know of any other body that does that. I mean, I've said it before, I'm a strong believer that if folks have something to say to us, like, come and talk to us. Like, you don't have to be scared to come up and participate in public forum and speak to us. We're normal people, just like everybody else, so it's like, if you wanna, you know, if you have something that you think we need to know or you wanna share with us, step up and share it with us. So, yeah, I don't know, I would rather folks do that. I'd like to see folks come and talk to us, so.
When I worked for King County, they bundle, but there was a 5-minute cap. Just FYI.
Okay. So, and we don't have to make the decision today. I just wanted to start the conversation and we can put it on next week's agenda to talk about it further.
One other thing I was gonna bring up, I think, I'm trying to remember when we used to have I'm positive, when we had the 5:30 meetings, it just in anticipation, if it ever happened that there were more people that showed up than the 15 minutes, we would have an open public forum at the end of the meeting too. Nobody was ever there to utilize it. But again, it was if more people than 5 wanted to speak, we do our 15 minutes at the start, we do our agenda, and then it's if there's anybody left that wanted to participate in open public forum, we had it at the end. That way we're capping it. So I don't know, that was a 5:30 thing. I know we're now at 2 o'clock, but just something just for historical reference. I know we used to do that at the 5:30s.
And
So
that would be potential just with executive session.
yes, correct, yeah.
We're at the 2 o'clock now with it all combined.
I was gonna raise the same question, and I wonder, is that allowed under the current rules to add to the public testimony if there was more than 15 minutes worth of people there?
No, that is not, it's not contemplated under the current rules. I think that portion of it is in code as well, so it would require a code update, but not particularly difficult to accomplish.
So,
I mean, that'd be pretty straightforward to do.
like I said, I wanted to have the discussion after last week, just to kind of put it out there, see what people are thinking, and then, like I said, let's come back next week and talk about it and figure out what exactly we want to do. But anyone is welcome to feel free to do a point of order if they would like. And we will start today handing out the rules as they stand today when people turn in a slip to speak. So we'll at least start that piece of it. And then we can talk about the rest. So at this point in time, if somebody wants to allocate their time, I'm not gonna then do any of that, change any of that.
Sure.
Scott.
I appreciate the commissioners having a conversation on this, on the rules. I do think it's completely appropriate, as many of the commissioners have already mentioned, that the public has a right to express concerns about activities, operations, policies, things that we've done. Today our issue has been around scraps. It's been road projects in the past. It'll be another issue in the future. So I think those are completely fair, and I know you all want to hear from the public on those. The chilling effect is when it gets to the personal attacks, and as we've seen, a lot of non-factual allegations that have been made, and that just does have a chilling effect on our employees, and I think it's important to think about them through this. So I appreciate the direction the board is going with this.
Okay, so then that's gonna take us to item number K. Yes.
I've asked Ashley to join because a lot of this came from her files. And Ron, did you see I sent you a more recent, I think, within K, right? Make sure I did the right thing. So as you all recall, over the past few months, we've had quite a few public testimonies around language access. Commissioner Jordan asked that I kind of compile a bit of what's required, where we are, what could be. So put this together in conjunction with him and his staff. So wanted to kind of just start with background. I met with Mia, they've testified a lot. Met with Global Wordsmiths, a company back east that Mia suggested. Met with ASAP Translations, it's a local Spokane-based translation interpreter company. A lot of our departments, most of our separately electeds or their chief deputies, pretty much everyone is in agreement that our top languages, you see in purple up there, they come in different orders for different departments, but they are consistently your Spanish, Russian, Ukrainian, Marshallese, and Arabic. American Sign Language is also prevalent in the courts. However, that's a kind of a different issue because it comes under Americans with Disabilities Act. Moving on to our requirements, under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, we do have requirements if federal funding is involved to offer services in different language under the National Origin Protection from Discrimination. And then our courts under the RCWs you see up there, 2.42 and 2.43, have some additional requirements out of the state. We do have a Title VI plan of which Ashley is our officer, is that the right title? And so that is primarily around the courts. The sheriff and public works is also highlighted because they receive so much consistent federal funding. And just by way of FYI, ARP and CARES did post all the appropriate disclaimers and such in all of our RFPs and contracts and such around ARP and CARES because that was federal money. Speaking with Chris and his team in legal does believe we are currently in compliance with state and federal requirements. He can only do more, but he did feel not misrepresenting that, am I, Chris?
From everything I've heard, it sounds like we have everything needed in place. Obviously, under Title VI, that could change depending on what circumstances come up with any given program that includes federal funding. So basically what happens with Title VI is if somebody comes forward and makes a request for language services in order to participate in a program that includes federal funding, then we would have to take some action to find a way to accommodate that.
And we do track those. So any of those, which we haven't had, come through my office being the officer. And then in the event that we have those, we track those. And as part of our Title VI compliance updates every year, we then would report those as a part of our recertification. So there is a process that's defined in our program and in our policies for Title VI in the event that that were to occur.
Okay. Commissioner French?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding that the state recognizes 34 different languages that they work to try and comply with. So it's much more exhaustive than the list that you've got here. Is the 34 languages something that's established by statute at the state level, or is that just a policy that different departments have adopted?
I have not seen anything under RCW. Different agencies have adopted different lists. In my research, I've come across with a lot of different numbers. Like in one instance, talking with Clerk Fitzgerald, AOC, the courts had translated into the top 5 languages, but the challenge was they translated it based on statewide data. We had, I believe he said, 1 language in Spokane of our top 5 was the same as the state's top 5. So then he was able to get a grant to do the other 4. So different agencies, I think depending upon the population groups they're working with, have set their own numbers, and there seem to be a lot of different formulas and metrics out there.
They've essentially created their own programs, Commissioner French. So they have identified what they will offer above and beyond what's required through the courts, and then determined based on what program they want to use and what outreach they are going to use, how many languages that would then impact, and then what services would be provided based on their programs that they have created.
And there are different rules if you are, when we're working with the Ukrainian refugee community, then that documentation, of course, would be put into Ukrainian. Talking with Chandra in emergency management, different, more local emergencies that she's worked with during her time with COVID. She had translated different documents into different languages based on the people group that she was working with, and if there was a higher concentration in a particular neighborhood. So it does shift depending on the population and the geography. Next slide. So just quickly, our language access plan, our LAP, is done with and through the courts. And if anybody saw a previous edition of this that was incorrect, I apologize. Ashley fixed that for me. And then moving on to the Title VI and EEO, why don't you just speak to that?
Yeah, so for as far back as I can see, the HR director has been the county's Title VI officer. So the last 2.5 years that I've been here, I've worked with our specifically sheriff's office and public works department and then our grants department to ensure that we continue to remain compliant and turn in all of our requirements each year. And then the HR director also creates, submits, and monitors compliance to our EEO policy and plan, which we are also required to upload EEO vets, different numbers annually through the different government entities that were required. So I ensure that those are all completed also, so that we remain in compliance with the different agencies that require that data to be uploaded.
The newest version's coming soon.
Working through the last of some of the updates, and then we'll have the EEO plan that I presented. There were a few different suggested changes, just working on the last couple, and then we'll have that out for signature for you guys and from the rest of our elected officials. And it uploads in, I want to say November off the top of my head, but in November, and it's just the data, not the whole plan, but in November, we will upload the county data as required to continue to remain in compliance with the codes.
So next, kind of just go through where we're at with our different departments in the county. So our county website is powered by Google Translate, 132 languages offered there. Of course, there's gonna be more concept to concept, not very specific. If you're at the auto parts store trying to get that exact net, it's probably gonna be difficult, but you're gonna understand you're at least trying to fix your car. The courts, the three together, Municipal District and Superior, are working on some plans around improved signage in the courthouse. Judge Zapone has been taking the lead on this. Commissioner Jordan's office has been in contact with her. We just got some new info this morning. We'll be looking through what I heard from Ashley Callan in the courts. This was a couple of weeks ago. They were hoping to install some signage both entrances to the courthouse annex that would offer in multiple languages kind of directions on what to do if you don't speak English. Sounds like Language Line, who most of our departments use, have business card size, I speak whatever language. So you can grab the card. If you go up to the court's translation office, then they would know, it's Korean, it's Vietnamese, it's Chinese. Those of us who don't speak Asian languages, we might, geographically as an Asian language, but not exactly which one. So then that can help them when they were to call Language Line. Language Line is installed in most. You'll see the 2 headset phone picture there. So generally you would call Language Line, tell them what language and interpretation service you need, and then you're side by side speaking with the translator helping. So the clerk's office has installed the Language Line. They are most recent. I don't know if training's happened yet. I know it was supposed to be quickly after I talked with the clerk, but that was a couple of weeks ago. They did have their two headset phones installed at that point. So next, I'll just go through the next slide quickly. When I talked to the assessor, he said it was rarely requested services. The auditor said it's a common request. She is looking into video and audio solutions. Most language line, whether it's the actual company language line or a language line type service, since COVID they generally all offer a video type service. Also, Scott Chesney said he had no memory of any request. The clerk office is a more common request again, and they're working on getting language line going. Prosecutor and public defender were very similar. They do use language line. They use certified interpreters in the courts. The prosecutor has been blessed with multilingual staff over the years, which has been helpful. ASL, sign language, is paid for under ADA, although the courts administer it. They were pleased to hear that the courts were looking on some enhanced signage. They would like the idea of a kiosk that was offering additional languages. The prosecutor mentioned it. Actually, I think I mentioned it to him because it came up with Ashton Callan. He liked the idea, as did the public defender. Next slide, we'll keep going through county offices. Sheriff uses language line. Treasurer, like the assessor, said it was a rare request. Emergency management had a quite robust program. And you see the languages that they have some material in because they, over the years, have had a reason to translate it. So you have, in addition to the top 5, Chinese, Dari, and Vietnamese, in addition to our top 5 most common. They also have quite a few, if you go to their website and kind of one-pager documents, that would be what you would get your information across with a pamphlet like. A lot of those are translated and linked to the website, so you can download it in whichever language would be helpful to you. She also uses native speaker voiceovers on PSAs that are going out to specific communities as needed. And then she works with Immigrant Connection and World Concern on outreach issues. Due to the nature of their work, makes sense that they have a bit more in depth going. Community services, the next slide, talking with Justin. They use Language Link. That's the only group in the county that I am aware of that's not with Language Line. And he says they use Language Link because some of the state programs use that, and it works best for them to use the same contract as the state. So doesn't have anything against Language Line, it's just this makes sense, this is where they're at. They use Universal Language Services for translation and interpreters. Again, that's in conjunction with a state contract. They do provide most of their documents in English and Spanish, and then some additional documents depending on frequency of request are also available in Marshallese. He brought up there's 2 major dialects of Marshallese and then multiple kind of subdialects. Language Link nationally only has 1 person who speaks one of those dialects, just to point out some of the challenges that he's had when there's that one dialect and it's that one person's day off or otherwise occupied. Their top 5 languages mirror the rest. They do have a language sheet, just a one-pager they can pass out to those who are not proficient in English, that has 12 languages. And he said they've just maintained that. Historically, he doesn't know exactly when, but at some point in time, there was a requirement to have the 12 languages. So they already had the work done. Since it's done, why not continue using it? And then they also, this was a new acronym to me, CLASS, the Culturally Linguistic Appropriateness Services. And so they work with groups who have them in a compliance at some level with CLASS suggestions, for lack of a better word. So community services like emergency management, and then I'd say the courts probably have our most robust. Now I'll take a breath and comments on that section. So moving on to some solutions, this is, sorry.
Mr. Mulder. Thanks, Jeff. This is a lot of good information. Thank you for working on it. Those language requests are consistent with the ones that we would have at the Northeast Community Center when I worked there, so very consistent with the work we did with the 2020 census as well.
They do come in different orders, so these are in,
Yes.
these are in order. Spanish, the Marshallese says second, so I don't know if yours is the same order
Yeah,
as this.
we hired 4 community outreach folks, Spanish speaking, Marshallese, Russian/Ukrainian, sometimes they speak both,
Yeah.
right? And then Arabic. But Arabic is kind of interesting, but it is a
Well, again,
common
it's a lot of
language.
people's second language, so there's a lot of different countries who might have a different first language. Like a lot of the
exactly.
world speaks English, although it's not their primary language. A lot of the world speaks Arabic, even though it's not their primary language.
Right.
So when you knock out everybody's second language, when I was getting my MBA in international business, it'd be funny with the international students, they would, okay, we speak this language, let's go with that one. And so Arabic does come up as a second with a lot of.
Yeah, we have African immigrants from different countries in Africa that speak Arabic, and then you have your Middle Eastern, you have a variety of
That speak that.
Yeah. The kiosk idea was something we also were working on at the Northeast Community Center, because trying to put up signage for every language can be overwhelming. And then what if you have to replace the signage or add another one? So like a kiosk that you could be easily updating with information that people could choose their language. Anyway, that was just one of the things that we ended up
Do you have some
going.
companies you were looking
I
at?
can follow up to find out if, but yeah, we looked at several. So when you walked into the center, you could figure out where you needed to go by pressing your language and then getting some basic information. Because we thought, how are we going to do all that in signage? I mean, signage is fine, basic, but then you forget a language, you miss a language, and on a kiosk that's more computerized, you can make changes more quickly. Yeah. So anyway, I can follow up with Dave Richardson at the Community Center to find out, because we were going to use some CARES money for that from the city.
And then next slide would be looking at possible solutions. This is something that Ashley had found when she was working on this. It's kind of like a phone, and you just program your 2 languages and you speak and write, and they speak back. When I watched them on YouTube, they work perfectly, of course, because they were promos. I don't know.
It kind of depends on which one, but for anybody who's a trash TV junkie like myself, 90 Day Fiance is actually where I saw some of these, which is what led me down.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've
I
seen
watch a
those
lot
too.
of trash TV. But this is what a lot of them use as a
Outing
cell
myself
phone
there.
type translation device. And so these were kind of the top ones that pulled up when I was doing research. To Jeff's point, they're not always perfect, especially when you start getting in different dialects and things like that. But they are options that are out there in the event that the commissioners ask us to continue to move forward with this.
If you see the price points up there, like the highest rank one, 178 on sale for 89. So they're not prohibitively expensive as a tool, assuming they work as well as their promos show.
Of course they do.
4.5 stars.
on the
Who could argue with that?
Gotta be true. Read it on the internet. The next slide is,
Just a quick question. Is this in theory like the kind of thing we could use at like a commissioner meeting if someone was testifying in a different language?
that's what we were
For
thinking. And the one thing Ron pulled together for us was we tested Zoom's oral to written translation. And we have a lot of language talented people around the county. Ashley has one lady who speaks French, Arabic, Spanish, as well as English, so she tested those. Victoria tested the Russian and Ukrainian for us. Gina helped with some Korean. So we tested quite a few languages on the Zoom to what I call closed caption. Again, if you're back at the auto parts store, you might not get that specific part, but we always knew what we were talking about. The concept translation. So I think from a testimony standpoint, that could be an option to look at. Definitely translated better when a person enunciated and spoke at more of this speaking tempo, not super slow, but the quicker the oral translation got a little messier. And then, did you get any more info on that, Ron, when you're at that conference?
Not translate, but Zoom signage was pretty robust that you could put on kiosk and screens for signage through buildings, relatively cheap.
So the Zoom language, it took Ron a matter of a few seconds to say speakers and Marshallese, which we actually weren't able to test yet. Please print it out in English. You just quickly choose your spoken and written languages.
And native speakers translated better. It was kind of cool.
One of the biggest things, whether it's Zoom or any of these devices, really is the pace at which a person speaks. So it almost loses where someone's at when they speak very quickly. So Spanish is a very fast language for a lot of people. So I have noticed that it loses the Spanish pretty quickly if people don't slow down to a kind of more structured pace. But I even have used it, we just myself as I was testing, but if someone they were speaking in Arabic, it translated it really well because of the pace that they were speaking in. And so if we could convey that, this is the pace to go, I think to Jeff's point, we have a pretty good shot at getting the general concepts. It might not be exact word for word, but it definitely makes sense when you're reading through it.
We tested it in this room, so it wasn't like we were right into a microphone either. We were just sitting around the table as it was tested. So the picture screen on here would be like you've all been to, skyscrapers or other big buildings that have the wayfinding. This is a company that I just solicited a proposal offline, off the internet. They do have language services available. You have your reader board. You can have it scroll between multiple signs if you want first a map, more directory, like at the mall, you're looking for Macy's, you are here, go there. You can get that in separate languages. You could have a screen that's a directory. If you wanted to have a rotating screen, it's summer, promoting the golf courses, what have you. Next page, a picture of a more freestanding one, different sizes, different this and that. There's a range of prices. At the 55-inch size, it's ranging $6,000 to $10,000 for indoor per digital sign installed. 15 to 20 for an outdoor sign. Certainly there could be some issues around vandalism if we do anything outdoor. And then outdoor signs is also different pricing, whether you're full sun, partial sun, they've thought of it all. And then price will also vary depending on if they do content development for you, if you do it in-house, and then if you also just get the plug and play and you install your own content or they help you. So just to, I didn't go way down this rabbit hole because if there's no interest or I don't want to take companies' times up for basics, but at least it gives us a ballpark on signage. Next page. So kind of where we are, and I see I still haven't corrected that typo. Where we area. Language line, most of our front-facing groups either have it or are willing to incorporate it. It fluctuates between the clerk's office has it at 98 cents a minute, others are the $1.38 a minute. So it fluctuates a bit. There's a few different services you can go with them. You generally are not paying a retainer. It's just there's a minimum of 3 to 5 minutes, I think, per call. But there's no monthly retainer, so it's kind of you use what you pay for. So that's a relatively, I'd say, affordable solution for front-facing departments. Do you want to speak to the ERP's abilities?
Yeah, so when I was at the Workday conference, Workday does have a language conversion tool that's built into the system. It's really more internal for our employees, but it can translate if we have different forms or templates that we upload into Workday. It can run the translator on it. It's definitely not 100 and some odd languages. It's kind of your more standard ones. So Spanish, Ukrainian, Russian, Vietnamese. But it is something that we could look into in the future. It definitely would not be just knowing my timeline, probably until 2026, that I would even have the capacity to start playing with that tool, because we want to get the full system implemented. And we will be done with that by end of 2025, beginning 2026. So if we are at a place in the future where that is something that would be helpful, then I could add that into that next scope of the Workday usage in the future, because we would have access to it.
We already talked about the Zoom. Those are just in mostly alphabetical order. And then one thing that we learned from other counties in the state, well, less the state, other counties, if you're going to do translation, I think it's good to have an objective formula. King County got in a little bit of trouble when a political decision was made for a certain language, and then another language group said, but there's more of us, and why them, not us? So if you ever go down that thought process, I think it'd be smart to just have an objective formula and objective data, where the data comes for the formula. So next slide gets us into data, and as is the world of data, how you ask the question is how you get the answer. So the top one I pulled from the city's recent, it was their draft. I assume it made it to the final. But those are the numbers that they chose for some of their work as an either or. I don't understand the either or because they're so far unrelated. Like 700 residents is way below 3.5%. That seems to be true with every county. The percent is a much higher bar than the raw number. From US data, if you this US Census, if you ask the question language other than English spoken at home, we were at 7.4. If you ask people who speak English less than very well, it dropped to 2.6, because this is one thing I think US Census doesn't do well, is you can speak English well and you're put in the less than very well category, which is grammatically correct. But I think it'd be a better split to put your well, very well together, and you're not well at all together. But you can put that in your federal agenda if you care. So then you go to the next page, and you're breaking out the spoken at home and the less than very well. We've also been unable, I spent a lot of time with Justin Johnson on this, and in the American Community Survey, which I know from my time at PUD, they don't do individual languages. They do Spanish because of its dominance nationally, and then they loop all your Indo-European other than Spanish languages together, which I believe is 42 languages. Your Asian and Pacific Islander languages get lumped together, and then a catch-all for other. All of my reading says when you fill out your questionnaire, you actually write what language it is. So I would think the data is somewhere. Haven't been able to find it. You can look at this more on your leisure if you have interest, but it gives you those numbers. The next slide gives some state data. And the state, this is from Justin Johnson, working with him. So the OSPI number is based on self-reported students. So you are a student, say I speak Spanish. The average Spanish household is 2.89. So if Ashley and I are siblings and we're at the same school, we could be overcounted as 6. At the same point, if you are a single or no longer empty nester, you're not going to get counted at all. And they actually write this up in their own survey. And, they acknowledge it is what it is. They go, it's the best they can do with the people they have, but they acknowledge there could be underreporting, overreporting. DSHS is based on the number of clients that come through the door. So that is a smaller universe. So these are all data points or data sets that could be used. Just we need to know what's in a data set and then use it somehow appropriately. Justin and Community Services, they use this state data because that's the way the state is set up. And so it makes sense for him to go with this, and he has more breakouts for Spokane. For sake of time, next page is my across some questions in multiple languages. Any questions? I was really proud of that graphic.
I'll just say thanks for all your work on this. Thanks for taking all my calls and as I bothered you to check in on it. When you talked with the various departments, you said that they seem to be willing to have additional resources. Was anyone opposed to having language line or anything like that?
I didn't have anybody who was opposed. Some brought up budget. When I let them know it's a pay to play, there was less concern around the financial side. I think the auditor's office would be the one that probably felt it'd be used a fair amount and had maybe the most obvious budgetary impact, but nobody was opposed. And I'd say actually everybody was, even the assessor and treasurer, like, well, why not have it for those 5 to 10 times a year if we're only going to pay for those 5 to 10 times a year?
And then I was going to ask Scott, did you get a chance to, I think you were going to check in with someone about if they'd had vandalism on, was the PFD on their signs outside or anything like that?
I have not connected with her. Yeah, that was one of the, Commissioner Jordan and I talked about if we do these kiosks or do some reader board signage inside, we could have one when you walk in the courthouse, the annex, public works building. Certainly would be nice to kind of lift up our technology presence on the campus, and a outside one would be pretty cool. We could get rid of the old app that's out there, that's static version. The concern would be, as Jeff mentioned earlier, is it something that we would have to fix a lot because of vandalism? What kind of plexiglass, what kind of tempered glass or whatever? So I was going to check with the PFD to see, because they've got various things all over. Do they have that experience or not? I hadn't yet done that, but I will.
The other thing Jeff and I had talked about was potentially, do we continue to keep kind of the map, but put a QR code with a globe next to it, because the globe is kind of universal. And so if a constituent then QR coded the globe, it could then link to a page that we have on the Spokane County website where they could then select whatever their language is, and then the map would populate with that language. So not having to have maybe the $20,000 TV screen outside, is there still a way to get to what we're looking at in the event this is the direction that we go? To Jeff's point, just a little feedback from departments. When I originally was working on this months ago, agreed there was a lot of, yeah, we'd love to have something like that. The second question always though was who's going to administer it? Because we don't have the capacity. Who's going to tell us what language is? Who's going to tell us what forms do or don't need? How often is this getting looked at? Who's going to do that? So definitely a willingness to have it included. But that follow-up question was always who manages the back end of this?
Because I nominated Ashley.
So that was always a question that came with it. So if this is a direction that we move, that is something for the board to consider, is there is work that comes with this. And so we would need to really understand what the scope of this program is, how we do it, potentially probably in alignment with our EEO plan, but it's different data, different things we're gathering, different analysis. So, that was the secondary question though that I got from most of the leaders that I spoke with.
I know Commissioner Jordan has to go. Do we want to have discussion on this next week? Or next steps? I don't want to cut it off unless y'all want to. I know we're behind today, and I know Commissioner Jordan is.
Yeah, because I think if we have more discussion, if you've got to go, then we can put it off till next week. I'm fine with that, yeah.
And I'd like to make a pitch for us modernizing our campus a little bit and bringing in some of those the signage, the digital signage that could have some displays that we run, county parks, golf courses, projects that we're doing, all kinds of other things in there, and then it integrates the language in there already. So I think we can address the modernization and be able to incorporate that stuff as just as an additive. So just a thought.
And I would like to find out who manages this system upstairs for the court system?
Courts do.
Who does the back end side of it though? Is it an IT person for the courts? Is it
Double check with Ashley, but
in the courts?
I believe it's their IT person internal, but I will double check on that.
Okay, because I know, like, when I was up there in May, one of them wasn't working. So, I mean, it's just one of those things that it's like, we're gonna have those issues. So and I know, was this before I was commissioner or just before, after? I mean, there was a whole committee that did a whole wayfinding. I don't remember who was on that committee.
I remember, that was like my first month or two as a commissioner. They came in, they presented to us, they had spent better part of a year coming up with a plan. And that's why, all our signs are the dark blue, because that was our code. Because, like 7 years ago, the plan was each section of sort of downtown would be color coded. And when you were in that zone, it was either orange or green, or the county campus was dark blue. I mean, I think we might be the only ones that actually did it, did our color. Did the U district, okay, so.
Commissioner French?
That was about it.
Yeah, the initiative around wayfinding was actually started by Commissioner Mark Richard when he was on the board, and he spent a lot of time trying to improve the wayfinding, not only on the county campus, but when he became president of the DSP, as Commissioner Kearns indicated, tried to extend that into the rest of the city and stuff. So there is a long history with regard to attempts to try and improve wayfinding on the campus. So,
is there general support among the board to get more concrete info on digital wayfinding, like lock down more price points?
I think interior, I'm not super excited outside, just because I think.
Well, even on the interior side, 'cause I can go back to these companies that I've got, kind of these initial, I didn't want to ask a whole bunch of questions if there wasn't, like, would you guys like some more specific info, at least on the internal ones, to see what it would cost to put up? In my mind, it'd be for your annex, your courthouse, your public safety.
I mean, but I guess that's, and let's talk more next week, because I mean, I like the idea of having that internal committee of people who come together who are the stakeholders of individuals to help guide us on that piece of it, rather than us just trying to figure out ourselves. I think that was some of the good things we did in the past of having these committees to help guide us. That's how I got to know a lot of people in the county. It's a nice way for people that are working in the county to get to know each other too, not just at the leadership level.
Different groups are going to think of different things. Right?
Yeah, no, so I think the language is almost, I know the two intersect, but it's like wayfinding and language are two separate
I
things
think
in
more
my
from
mind
just
right now.
a better price point to see if the price is worth going forward. Or are you good with the price points that are up there for that?
I think the price points you have up there are fine for
Good
right
for
now. And then, so we'll talk more next week.
Just at the Northeast Community Center, we were positioning it like, how do we create a welcoming and accessible and easy to get around campus between the school district and the community center there up in Hilliard? And so these are all pieces of the puzzle, right? Like, being accessible means language accessibility, but also, disability
A lot of
wise.
people who speak English here can't find their way.
Exactly. There's a lot of wayfinding
That's
needing
true.
in general. Yes, yes.
Even when there's nice blue signs with an arrow, that's it. I mean, you gotta look around.
Some directions to go pay their property taxes this morning.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jeff.
I'll pull that stuff from the King Center
Good
too.
deal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am now, we are so far. So, I don't know that we can get to everything in the next 45 minutes, but we can try. Okay, so we're gonna start, is Leanne here?
I think she might be online.
Is Leanne Yamamoto online?
If not, we can cover her. She had to head to Seattle, so
Okay.
that change in schedule this morning disrupted her attendance.
No worries, okay, so Kyle, we will let you guys
Looks like we might have her.
Oh,
Do you
we
have her
do.
presentation by chance, Ron? Yeah, she won't say it, so I'll go ahead and say it as a point of interest. Her son plays for the Kraken and it's their
Yes.
home opener, so obviously it needs to be on the road to get over there for that.
She does, that's important to support him, Leanne.
Hello, I'm here too. Sorry about that.
It's all
Sorry.
good.
Well, thank you so much. And sorry, I am on Zoom and not in person, but I appreciate your consideration for that. I'm here today. Can I move the slides or we can go to the next slide? I'm here to brief you on our state agreement with the Washington State Department of Transportation to implement our commute trip reduction law for Spokane County. The contract is 2 years. It has already started July 2023 and goes through June 2025. The total is $647,100. We also administer the Guaranteed Ride Home program for the state agencies as well, which is $4,000. So the total funding for this project for 2 years is $651,100. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we do, this is a regional program. We do implement the CTR law for the 7 jurisdictions within our area. And as you can see from the slide, they're Airway Heights, Cheney, Liberty Lake, Medical Lake, Spokane, Spokane Valley, and unincorporated Spokane County, all of which have affected work sites in their area, which is noted by the 95 work sites. And then it'll be broken out by work site for the funding, which is for their part. So with that, we will have intergovernmental agreements coming in the next few months with this contract as well. So those will be coming to you in the next month or so. Next slide. With the CTR law, there are goals in place with our work sites and our jurisdictions. We want to have them reach a 6% increase in their non-drive alone rate from their baseline, and then a 13% reduction in vehicle miles traveled. And these work sites survey every 2 years, and we work with them ongoing to help them with their program and to help them meet those goals. Next slide. And I presented this, I think, last month, but just wanted to say that or point out the impact in the community for this program. We remove over 8,300 trips off the roadways each day and over 141,000 miles per day as well. So amounts to about 5.7 trips around the world each day. And with that, you can go to the next slide. That just concludes my presentation. So if anybody has any questions.
I'm not seeing any questions. You do a great job with it. So thank you for all the efforts you do.
All right. Well, thank you and go Kraken.
Yes, go Kraken. There we go. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
You guys are next up.
Yes, we have a couple different sets of traffic code revisions here. We'll try to rip through these quite quickly so that we can try to give you a few more minutes back into your schedule this morning. Okay, the first group are all reduction in speed to 20 miles an hour for school zones. And also, just as a note, Commissioner Cooney, we're going to add that anytime we have the school zones, make a note that it is for school zones, just so it's real clear for everybody.
Appreciate that.
So this first one you can see is up north. It's the new Mead Creekside Elementary and the sports complex there at Market and Farwell. And we're reducing where the red lines are, basically, just to create a safer crosswalk there on Farwell, and then also down Freya Street between the school and the stadium there. Next slide.
Is that just during school hours?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest, Commissioner Cooney. I think the signs are permanent. I think they're 20 mile an hour. I don't even think they're when children are present.
Okay.
So that will permanently be 20 miles an hour?
Let me find out.
Okay.
And
I'll
that
find
would
out
just
just
seem odd just for that section.
Yeah, and Farwell's so busy for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
That's
and-
a tough one to
And
reduce.
Farwell and Market, you're on the other side of the stadium, so
Yeah.
when you're at Freya and or Freya and Farwell, still you're at the stadium, just one side of the stadium being 20 and the other not, it seems.
I think they're worried about the kids crossing to the elementary on the west side as the primary concern for the reduced speed, but
I
let me
could see
find
that
out.
being more permanent since it's right there.
On Freya,
Yeah,
but
on Freya.
Farwell seems
Yeah.
a little odd.
Okay, I'll email you all with what I find out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Next slide. So this is out in Otis Orchard up in the East Valley, and you can see it's at Wellesley and Arden there, and this is for the existing Otis Orchards Elementary School. And that's just another school zone. Next slide.
And then I'd ask the same question if that's.
Yeah, I'll find out for all of them. I think it's the same signage, so.
We just had all the,
Yeah, the crossings. Yeah, we did
we had a pedestrian improvement project out there this year as well.
No, because that's, again, Wellesley out there is pretty busy by that school, so.
Yeah, it would be nice if it was when children are present, but let me find out. Okay. And third one is a less busy road, so maybe less critical, but it's the far South Hill, 63rd Avenue, where they're also building the new school, but this is for Mullen Road Elementary is the focus of where we're reducing the speed is around that school. Okay.
No, which is good. I just had a constituent call about up in that area, so yeah, I can, I'll talk to you. They'd like to take it 35 down to 20. I'm like, yeah, that's gonna happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll get one more. This one's just another traffic code revision. It's for removing weight restrictions on Lincoln. And it's the section we just rebuilt with our capital project this year. So basically the road was in really bad shape and we were restricting trucks, but obviously since we've rebuilt the road, we're gonna remove the truck restriction and make it a route people can use when they're hauling freight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
That seemed to be very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And that's gonna take us to rain. Check everything out on the front.
One quick item for today. County Extension Office has some extra space in the State of Washington Department of Agriculture would like to rent an additional room in the basement. Currently, they have one room down there. This would be expanding them to 2 rooms. Can answer any questions, but we would have this on your consent agenda for next week. They also have space on the 2nd floor that they've had for 5+ years, much longer. The bottom floor has only been for the last year, so.
As long as the space is available.
And there's a 6-month, if we ever need the space back, we do have 6-month notice.
I guess it's just as we look at all these to make sure we're covering our costs.
This one is extending it at the same price that the lease was at. When this lease comes up, I think we do need to relook at the rates, so.
Hey, Doug. You've patiently been here all morning.
Oh, feels good to stand.
You should have taken your coat off and stayed a while.
You know, maybe Julie will join me. I'll try to be very quick. It's very nice to be here, and I'm here to talk about a couple of our capital projects. Next slide, please. Our West Plains Community Park and our Plants Ferry Sports Complex, Phase 1 of both of these projects. And I'm here to chat about a request to utilize or pursue alternative delivery and package these 2 projects together. Next slide, please. They're both funded through ARPA funds, if you recall. So just a quick background. Back in 2022, there was a total of 11 million awarded for these projects, approximately 6 million for the West Plains to acquire, master plan, design, and get under construct our Phase 1 of that park, as well as a cooperative venture between the county and the city of Spokane Valley to share equally in the cost of the master planning and then use of the ARPA funds towards phase 1 implementation of that project. And again, as you understand, we eventually came to learn that we must be under contract in 2024 for use of these funds from a construction standpoint. And so, next slide. And this is just, again, a very quick update. We're very close. We've been busy working on the master planning for both of these projects. We'll be coming to see you with a final recommendation. We just recently had our third and final open house this last week out in the West Plains. The planning's going very, very well. The community is very excited. And we have a final plan that we'll be coming to present to you here in late November, 1st of December. Next slide. And again, the Plants Ferry master planning is very nearly completed. We just a few weeks ago had another workshop on that, and we're scheduled, I think 2 weeks from now, we'll be having the consultant will be coming in and they will be presenting and providing an overview of the master plan in our phase 1, and we've targeted again our $5 million budget for phase 1. Next slide. And so really jumping into the alternative delivery, these are the same slides you might recall seeing where we looked at for Vista Stadium. By packaging these projects together as one, we feel that as a project value, it can attract a firm that is accustomed to the alternative delivery. I will say the alternative delivery is working extremely well with the stadium. We're off and running. Just the level of communication and the tone is just so proactive between the architect and the contractor and the owner. I've really been pleased with how it's working, and I feel that it can work very well for these projects, and we would like the opportunity to, again, pursue alternative delivery versus the traditional design bid build, where the project is fully designed, it goes out, and then there seems to be this constant back and forth over trying to decipher what those plans say, and as opposed to that cooperative interaction on the front end. Next slide, please. This presentation talks about the GCCM. I've had many conversations with Kyle, who I'm going to pull in here a little bit. And this is one option for alternative delivery. The way the presentation is written, we're suggesting this. But as I'm learning and continuing to learn, there could be it could be a couple different methods that we might consider. I think GCCM is highly likely for this project. The first next step that I'll get to at the end would be to onboard an owner's representative that we would work with to help us select the best fit of alternative delivery, whether it be GCCM or design bid build, or I will take Kyle in and he can speak a little bit to some of the different options that we might discuss.
Certainly. So the most likely options that would be suitable for this project, GCCM with what's called an alternative subcontractor selection is probably what we'll end up with, but a progressive design build is an alternative option. Because we have a designer on board, it would be a slightly nuanced iteration of that, where you would actually pick your designer and builder separately to create a design build team. GCCM you always select separately, which is why you do this. And then in addition to that, because of the nature of the project with the two sites and frankly, the scope, one of the most dominant scopes in this being the landscaping component of it all, is probably one of the most susceptible trades to getting a bad partner. And so it would be highly recommended to go with a qualifications-based selection for your landscaping contractor as opposed to a traditional low bid on this, which is also nice because you can roll the irrigation design into that as well if you'd like, and work with really truly find the best team out there, have them on board during the design phase, use all of their input onto that. So the two parks that really don't have the traditional, 25 subs that you would have in a big construction project. This is gonna be much more limited, so it's kind of great. You can bundle all that scope together, go out there for a qualified selection, and have somebody truly be a partner early on in the project and enhance the project success, work with you to really right size the design towards the pricing that you.
And maybe I'll jump to the.
Go ahead, keep going. No, I'll wait till you're done and then I can ask the question.
Okay, maybe I'll jump us to the last slide, Ron.
Maybe you'll answer my question.
Okay, well, again, some of the advantages, we mentioned the communication, a lot of that communication ongoing. But I think we're just about, the next to last slide really talks about next steps. Again, there's our phase one, a little preview of what you'll be seeing here in a couple weeks. Next slide, please. And again, here we are. Thank you. Perfect. So if you're supportive of pursuing the alternative delivery, it would involve, we would begin advertising for qualifications to select an owner's representative to bring on board. And looking at these two projects that I'm very intentionally trying to time it, we would have our owner's rep on board about the same time we will be finalizing the master plan and really ready to go. And recognizing some of the elements and the amount of time it will take, we're just really have mapped out a process and are trying to utilize the time that we have as effectively as possible. I'll stop there for
Commissioner
questions.
Waldorf and then Commissioner French.
So my question was more around the Plants Ferry piece of it. So are you starting to get kind of dollar amounts for different pieces of the master plan as it's being developed?
Yes.
And I guess I'm wondering, is the Valley, the city of the Valley, because I'm new on this, are they contributing, do they want to contribute? Like, let's say there's a one piece of it and we're putting 5 million, right, of the county ARPA dollars towards it, but what if it's more than that? Is the Valley also gonna want to make some choices about how they might contribute to get a piece of that done? Just wondering if that's
Yeah, I think
a complicating
I
factor.
think that conversation will occur. We've initially targeted the 5 million for phase one. I think what we're learning as the cost estimates are refined and additional information and feedback is coming in, there is a likelihood that it may exceed that 5 million. And so I think there would need to be a conversation from a prioritization standpoint. We of course would either have the option to find additional dollars, whether they be from the city of Spokane Valley or otherwise, or we reduce the project to live within the budget. And so once we have more firm estimates and figures, then it will be in a position to have that conversation. And looking ahead to Plants Ferry, one of the components will be discussing what a future partnership might look like. But from a timing standpoint and use of ARP dollars, I really need to be utilizing this time and moving forward with that phase one, whether I'm living within the funds we have or there's opportunities to add to it. And we can certainly design the construction with bid alternates so that we're planning ahead and generally would plan ahead to
That's
work
what I
within
was-
those confines.
Because usually you want to get bids in for a certain amount of money that we have to spend, right, under this amount. But if we don't know exactly if there's other sources of funds coming in, but you're saying you could always.
We don't have any specifically identified right now, but we're also waiting for that final cost estimate. And should it exceed the 5 million, then certainly there's an opportunity for those conversations to happen.
But it's important to get started now so you can get this all.
Be able to be under contract
2024.
and working within, and are some unique restraints to use of the ARP dollars after 2024, where we're really limited to live within those ARP dollars unless there are outside funds.
Got it. Okay.
Commissioner French and then Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I've had a number of conversations with Representative Marcus Riccelli, and he is a big supporter of Plants Ferry and has indicated to me a number of times, if there is any opportunity that he could weigh in and help to make improvements to Plant Ferry, whether it's artificial turf or other elements, that he would be more than happy to champion that. So I would recommend circling back with Representative Riccelli and say, here's what we're trying to do, here's what our limitations are, and see what he can do to help in terms of maybe bringing some state money to this project. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that, because I think there's a certain fund for youth sport. I don't know if it's youth sports or like the HUD got some additional funding. I think Boys and Girls Club in the past has gotten funding that there's a certain section for some of that. So
Yeah, and I have heard that, and again, anxious to finalize the plan with those dollars, and then we'll have that, be prepared to have that conversation and certainly pursue other funds.
I was just gonna comment on, if you look at the map or that visual there, clearly the master plan is going to show a significant capital investment that would be needed in order to do all that sort of stuff. We have had a variety of conversations with the Valley over time, because this is right adjacent to their city limits. A lot of their residents use this park, heavy users. They're very interested, have expressed interest in partnering with us. We haven't defined that partnership, but partnering with us in some ways. So as the master plan gets kind of finalized and the commission get a chance to see it, and we see what a potential estimate might be, a lot of these things can start to come together with talking with the state, talking with the Valley, and figuring out what the sequential next steps are. As Doug mentioned, this is the critical one to get done. And one of the unknowns right now is the access that we're trying to improve on the south end of it is coming off Trent Ave. So we've got DOT that's involved, and there's going to be some things that they're going to ask or require us to do, which is part of the unknown that I think Doug refers to as well. But pretty exciting. I mean, there's a great opportunity to improve that whole complex out there.
For Commissioner Waldorf, I mean, Commissioner CUNY and I went out, what year did we go out and talk about? Like 2019, so we went out and spoke about, pre-COVID, to talk about partnering with the Valley. We spoke in front of their council. I have heard from a majority of the members of the Valley City Council, they want to partner in some way on Plants Ferry. There is hesitancy from some of the members because it's not actually in the city of the Valley. They kind of create sort of a little peninsula around it, but it's still in unincorporated county and a county park. So there is hesitancy there, and there I know there was discussions about if they were to spend dollars on it, they would want to annex the property, and then we would split ownership. So I mean, the many different ideas thrown out on there. I do think there is a desire by the majority of the council to partner with us in some way. We just really need to find the way it happens.
they would like to have more control, because it's really an economic driver for them, because of all the tournaments that happen on the weekends and all that. So they see it as a benefit.
Yeah, I've had some conversations, so yeah, they want more control, but then there's also responsibility that comes with maintaining a park, so trying to find that balance of what that partnership might look like,
But they have been very clear, they don't want full ownership of it, they want a partnership in it, and so, which is understandable.
Well, it's a great asset, and so it's an opportunity to have those discussions is what I'm hearing. Okay.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, with regard to the West Plains Park, I was expecting the city council was going to take an action to authorize the extension of water for that park yesterday, and it got pulled. Do you have any information as to why it was pulled? Because I talked to 4 of the members of the council and felt pretty comfortable that it was moving forward. So do you have any information as to why it was pulled yesterday?
My understanding is it was one of 6 or so water service related items. And I think the questions on the surface seem to deal with the others more than ours, but they felt that it was appropriate to grab the entire batch and delay that entire batch of requests for an additional 2 weeks to allow some of the council members that have not been on the different committees that may be seeing this for the first time, additional time to ask questions and look into that. So is that I think the best way to describe what's been relayed to us. And we are ready to provide additional information if questions come up. We've looked specifically at, which we've talked about before, a need and a willingness to provide a deed-related restriction we're looking at in the form of an easement for sewer and water on a condition that we would agree to utilize the park or the land for park purposes indefinitely if we're allowed to connect. And again, right now, we're dealing strictly with the water service expansion area, the ability to connect to water. If that goes well, as we believe it will, and if we're successful, then we can also discuss possible means of sewer connection. But we're looking at one item at a time at this point. We feel we're very close, and that's what we understand.
Have we explored the possibility of having to drill a well on the property for irrigation purposes? Because all we're going to use that water for is irrigation, not for domestic consumption.
There's a small residential well on the site right now. I don't know exactly what it produces, but initial research suggests that we would really need to connect to the city water if possible. If not, we've talked about alternatives, whether it be synthetic turf versus natural turf, and we would dig deeper to learn more about the well on site and what it might enable us to do with what's there. So we've had more informal conversations that way because of the optimism and the favorable conversations to date that have occurred related to the connection.
Thank you.
So my next steps, again, if we're supportive of pursuing an alternative delivery method, we would be looking to issue a request for qualifications in the next week or two to seek an owner's representative. We would, again, as on our last project, we would work with Mr. Evans and the county prosecutor to, again, appoint an onboard special legal counsel that's required for a alternative delivery with that unique experience. And we would continue to work with our landscape architect that we have on board and, again, just go in that direction. And as you recall, the owner's representative would ultimately help us make application to the PRC, which we have to be approved in order to officially move forward and utilize the alternative delivery. So those would be our next steps. And if you are supportive of us working in that direction, we will continue to go down that path.
So my question is GCCM versus a design bid, proposals. So which are you thinking of doing? Because they're two separate alternative methods. So
Again,
we talked about both of them, so I'm
right. Our conversations to this point suggest it's very likely the best fit would be the GCCM with the subcontractor option alternative for the project. That said, if we allow that to be open to have that conversation with the expert being the owner's representative, we would finalize that with them, and or if they had a different method that they felt would be a better fit and why, and convinced myself and more importantly Kyle, who really helps me with these items and his experience, then there's the possibility we might utilize a different option, still working with the landscape architect that we have selected and already onboarded, if you will.
So I guess that's my concern, because so who's the one who's in a GCCM overseeing it versus doing a design build? Because the design build, you're getting the architect and the landscaper kind of on at the same time. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out who's the contractor in a GCCM, you know, because traditionally it's, you know, building contractor, and so I understand that, so I'm just curious on this side.
So it's the same pool of firms, both in the GC and the design build. Some are slightly better than others, but
But is it a landscape firm, or I guess that's what
no,
I'm-
you're likely to get one of the larger more construction firms that applied for both the ops building project and the other project. Our landscape contracting community, they're not quite geared up to go run an alternative delivery project.
Right,
So
but that's
you-
where I'm wondering if design build is better, because you're combining that with the architect and you're getting a team.
You know, there's the one of the nuances on this is that, you know, we have the architect on board that has done the LA that is doing the master plan, completing that, and can easily roll into the design phase here. There's only one entity, which is going to be an interesting conversation with the OAs, because they are truly the experts in this. University of Washington has been doing progressive design build by actually selecting a contractor and architect separately and then putting them under the same contract. GCCM, it just means that the owner has separate contracts with the designer and the construction manager, but what the GCCM is tasked to do in working with that architect for a target value design and to deliver the project is the identical purpose. It's still a qualifications and relationship-based delivery methodology, and they're ultimately responsible to guarantee that price as well.
So for me, I'm not speaking for the other commissioners, I have more questions that I'm not ready to quite say, just because, yeah, just knowing that area a little bit, I've just got some more questions that I just need to get answered, than making a decision today.
What the RFQ, as they would be putting it out right now, would be for owner's representative for alternative delivery support. So whichever path it is, I mean, the real decision point at this point is alternative delivery versus truly going out for a traditional design bid build. And then what would likely happen is through a robust procurement process where they would be discussing their ideas along that, and then a selection committee would be selecting that firm. That recommendation would be brought forward after further vetting with that community to bring back to the Board of County Commissioners to say, this is where we want to go, whether it's progressive design build or GCCM with alternative subcontractor selection, and here's why. We vetted this through the contracting community, and this is the expertise that we've received.
Yeah, I guess I
Yeah, and I was gonna say the exact same thing. I think that would be the next step. If you're supportive of that, we would pursue that owner's rep. We would absolutely come back to the board again when we have a clear method that we would like to pursue with the owner's reps help.
I guess I'm still just on, I totally get combining these two projects and doing all of that, and I just still have questions, so. I guess I'm just one commissioner.
If you'd like additional time, if that's not gonna throw off the project if we wait a week, right?
I think we.
Maybe it will.
I think we have a pretty tight time.
Jeez.
I think we'd have.
Why weren't you in here last
I was
week?
gonna say, yes, we need to have this discussion so we have time to think, not react.
I would, maybe I'll suggest, if we could have a conversation, this week, and then we'd like to have it on the consent agenda next week, so we still have time to have the conversations, and if you have questions on it, for sure.
I'm comfortable with moving forward with just this first step in the process, because I think.
Just the ownership.
Yeah, I'm trusting that you guys are looking at all the options, and if if one of these pathways makes the most sense to get this done in a timely, affordable manner, then, I'm okay with it.
And my response is simply that I would highly not recommend a traditional low bid process for these projects. I think that's very high risk, considering what we've seen with the landscape construction community out there right now, and which is why taking this step doesn't commit us one way or another, other than moving away. And again, this is just to issue an RFQ, not award the contract yet. And it is just setting the tone to say, we're stepping away from a low bid.
I would be okay to put it on the agenda to have, we can always strike it if by Tuesday.
Seems like a good balance.
If I'm not feeling, again, I'm just one commissioner. But yeah, I'd like to have further discussion on it. Because I just want to make sure, I understand what you're saying, but I also, want to make sure that, as some analysis as to what the costs are doing it, other than just the landscape community, as to why going with an alternative method is more cost effective. Just laying out the pros and cons of it. I mean, because hearing you talk about it, I probably know more than the average person on these things, and so I just want to make sure I understand it all. Commissioner French, any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm comfortable putting it on the agenda for next week. I understand that we're not making a decision as to which path we're going to pursue, other than it's going to be an alternative to the traditional design bid process and stuff. So I'm comfortable moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Great, and we'll work towards soliciting for an owner's representative. Thank you very much.
Can you and I get on each other's calendar?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Jeff, we're back to.
Yes, and she's been missing me.
We have been missing you.
You're back.
Maybe we'll make this one go
How quick
quicker.
can you be that? That's the.
Quicker, how's that?
Your last two have gone fairly long.
So this is around the federal grant consultant process that we're in. Each of you last week.
Introduce Victor.
Oh, everybody knows Victor.
Hi, Victor.
Nice to meet you.
I met Victor over email. That's it.
Victor Lemers directed us through the process in procurement. So each of you received last Friday an email from Victor with a link. Generally, when we do procurements, you sign just a statement that you don't have any conflict for transparency reasons. As of yesterday, most of you had not done that yet. So just, are there concerns around that or questions?
Yeah, I can say, I know Commissioner Jordan reached out to Chris Anderson, I reached out. We haven't seen, I've never seen this before, come before the commissioners, and we've done different types of these before. I mean, when we were doing the small arms range, I think Commissioner French was on the committee, I don't know. So it's just a question that we haven't seen it come before us as commissioners before. Certainly, if ever we feel like there's a conflict, we've always recused ourselves, or whether from the conversation, or from a vote. So that's why it just was odd to have us do this in our positions. So
unless you're in a continuing role of being on an evaluation team, it is unusual. But it's a standard procedure when it comes to public procurement, with the idea of our guiding values are to be open, fair, and transparent. So anytime we deal with public funding and there's an evaluation team, we'll list the businesses or the firms or the individuals, and it's an opportunity for those who are evaluating to say, I do or do not have a bias. And if I do have a bias, even an appearance, we want to make it noted for the record that going into this, it's been revealed. And then a summary will be like, it's an appearance, but not a direct, to avoid bias moving forward.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I've already authorized the signature on the agreement and stuff. So I've been involved in another search where this was requested and stuff, so I'm not that unfamiliar with it or uncomfortable with it. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm not uncomfortable with, I'm fine to do it. I just, traditionally as commissioners, we've always just, stated any potential conflicts we've had, and, whether we, as you remember back, when I was on Hatton Settlements Board, recused myself on some of the lease agreements, just those kinds of things that we've, have always been forthright about that. So, I mean, it was just, we haven't signed it for anything else, but we're signing it here. And so it just was one of those that we've always been, upfront about any conflicts or any of that, received or otherwise, that we've either recused ourselves or not been part of it. So, so anyway, that's why I just was questioning it from that perspective, that also electeds are not, we're held to our own standards that are different than what the employees, as we know, policies and procedures the employees go through. So that's why I reached out to Chris to see if this was something we needed to do or not do.
And as I've said to both Commissioner CUNY and Commissioner Jordan, outside of the meetings, it's something that I think is, is standard practice. And so from that point of view, certainly fine to do. It is also covered. All of the aspects of that are covered by various RCWs and laws that apply. And I believe in the setting that this is going to be, the commissioners are going to be participating in, it will be an executive session, and therefore confidentiality will also be covered. There is no strict legal requirement to sign this form in order to do this process, but it is, as Victor mentioned, the standard purchasing process. So really, it is up to the board whether you'd like to sign or not. However, I think it should be a collective. If the board is going to do it, it should be everybody, or if not, again, everybody. I advise a uniform process.
Maybe thinking of it because I've always done it on procurement, so I thought others knew.
So yeah, I was just gonna ask, is this the policy then, the second page in the county's policy handbook around it? That's taken from.
Policy for that. No, this is all more direct to.
Right, I was just wondering what, just so I know, where is the policy in the county process document about, just, just so as we move forward. And I guess I was wondering, when you looked at the state lobbyist contract with Mr. Burgess, I think it was
a renewal, so.
So you didn't do you didn't request other proposals for that? Okay, just wondering.
The original state contract had, I think, a 2 renewal provision. So when it was renewed 2 years ago,
right,
it was under that, which is a different scenario.
But we've not put out a request for proposals. I know, Commissioner French, in your time on the state contract?
We've not in my time here.
So yeah, if there's a policy that I can just point to, that would be great, because I know there are federal rules, like when I was at the city with any of the COC or CDBG money, we had to sign because the federal government required you to say you didn't have any conflict, so if there's a
I don't believe there's a state or federal,
if there's a county policy, if I could see that.
Policy, or is this just
It's not in county code.
Okay.
This is a procurement process.
Yeah, I think standard practice, and obviously Victor can speak to that. And certainly this is a slightly different than I think most procurement, where you're not doing it in executive session. It's not electeds necessarily, or I don't know how frequently electeds are on it, but I imagine for the most part they're probably not. And so there's some slightly different circumstances. This is also a contract for services, which legally speaking gives you much more leeway in the process than other types of contracts and other types of procurement. I mean, that being said, obviously you want to do things in a manner that is open and transparent and covers all of your bases. But because of how this is being done, legally speaking, we can go either way. I would advise just doing it uniform, whichever direction.
So right now, I know at least one commissioner has signed, and so just one. Yes. So that's where we are right now.
I believe he already stated who that was.
So is the process then do you, and I'm sorry, I was kind of getting hung up on, what is this form and why are we doing it now? Or, okay, so it's helpful to understand the context. And I didn't read all the instructions, so do I need to go in and look at the list of those firms that have applied and then see if I have any conflicts and then sign the form? Okay.
And then you're
I didn't even open up further than sign this form.
It's on the, should be on the front of the first page of that form.
It's right at the top.
The form will actually
Oh,
say
sorry,
all
not
the
this,
different firms.
on the attachment that Victor sent out.
And then if you choose to do the form, once the form's returned, then you get a link to the 3 applications.
So if I click into the PDF, that's where I can see,
I
okay,
think it's,
got it.
I mean, it's all the standard, conflict, I mean, that you're not benefiting, I don't have it in front
I'd
of
be
me,
very
but
surprised if any of you had any conflicts with any of these firms.
still know people or talk to people, but it's,
Knowing and meeting them is not a conflict.
yes.
Got it. All right, well,
It's just a common,
I'm fine
it's a common
with signing.
practice for us, and I think you're generally not involved in the RFP evaluation committee, so you're not in a position of signing these things. You've opted to do them, so
But a lot of times, I mean, it still comes to us to finalize it.
always comes to you.
So I mean, so in some ways, it's that, I guess that's part of it too. It's
But
like
at the
it's-
staff level, we sign the conflicts before it gets
Right.
moved up to the board for final decisions.
but to your point, we're always supposed to recuse ourselves if, when it comes to us, if there is any kind of
Yeah.
appearance of conflict.
I mean-
As am I. You know, I mean,
And
it's
to that
almost-
end, that is, I mean, it's a kind of an extra redundancy in the process, right? Because as the board knows, those standards apply, you know, regardless of whether you're on that initial panel doing the review or whether you're approving it. And so it's kind of process and practice that is there as a safeguard and there to document that we're
Got it.
following the process, so.
The question, do you guys want to do the form?
I'll sign it, it's not.
I mean, I don't,
I have no problem signing. I recognize 3 names on here. I don't even know if I have phone numbers for any of those
Yeah, I'm
3
like,
people,
oh,
so.
I mean, I think we can, but I think, yeah, it's just one of those that.
Next time, note to self, we'll ask beforehand that we realize this isn't standard.
When, like I said, because I think we're all very good about trying to identify, you know, any conflicts or any of that we have, because we're always worried about what public perception is. So I think we all tend to be very conscientious about that and make sure that, I would always rather caution, you know, be cautious and not be part of a vote, you know, that I shouldn't be, or that somebody perceives that I shouldn't be. Because I know even as we've talked about it over the course of time, it's like, there isn't really a conflict, but it could be perceived, and so I just always err on the side.
What timeline are you guys wanting to do these interviews? Because I think the answer to that question will dictate everything else.
I'll dictate when we have time to do that.
We're thinking, what you guys will be thinking. We were thinking 45-minute interview times with a 15-minute download between each candidate, so a 3-hour block of time. There were 4 applications. 1 was deemed not responsive by procurement, so we just have the 3. If you want to interview all 3, it'd be a 3-hour block of time. If it's less than all 3, that's another decision.
I don't think I need 3 hours.
Yeah, I would think a half hour would be plenty.
I would think we could come up with questions ahead of time to ask each.
Unless it's the kind of thing, are you doing 45 minutes because you're thinking we'll ask for 35 minutes, then we'll take 10 minutes to discuss in between?
Yeah, that was it. We give you a 15
So if we
minute
just do
between
30 minutes total,
he
then
was-
we're
he was-
shrunk down.
to chat between while it's fresh in your mind. So at this point, the way it was set up and the way it went out, we can still make changes, was you guys, we would invite them to come and give a 20-minute presentation. You can change that timeline if you want. And then you would just hear their presentation. When their presentation is done, instead of having set questions, you would ask follow-up questions. And then the last page under your paper clip that Victor put together is the scope of work and those preferred qualifications. You'll recall we went over multiple times. As long as your questions are somehow related to one of those bullet points or their initial presentation, which I think would be pretty broad, then you could ask follow-up questions. Or if you want to have set questions, we need each firm to be asked the same questions. Or option C, you could say, here are some set questions, like Victor put all these bullet points together on the front page. Make sure you cover these in your presentation. And anything else, that is why you're so wonderful.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In the last round for selecting a contractor out at the airport, we gave each one of the respondents a list of questions that they had to address in their presentation. And that way we made sure that at least all the applicants had a uniform response and prepared response. And then we asked questions specific to their presentation and stuff. That actually worked very well. I was surprised that it gave us more information than we otherwise might have gotten just out of general questions and stuff. So just sharing that as an observation.
No, thank you. And then what was, when you guys did it at the airport, what was your time frame?
We had each applicant had to do a 20-minute presentation, and then we had 20 minutes for questions after that. So we allocated 40 minutes for each one of them.
And then you guys talked about it for 20 minutes?
Yeah, of course, that was selecting a design build team for the main concourse and stuff. So there were a lot of elements in that we wanted them to specifically address in terms of the talents and skill sets they were bringing to the table. And this thing, you could probably make it a 15-minute presentation and accomplish the same thing. That's a lot more involved project than this is. It's pretty specific to what can you do for us and how much money do you have in your pocket?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you had, because I know you guys are going through this process at the airport for a federal consultant as well. So
yeah, we haven't done the interviews for the federal consultant yet. That's still on the radar. This was for the design build team for the main concourse improvements.
I think we've passed the airport, and you guys wanted us to move a little more quickly. Okay. I think we've passed them in the process.
I think they could do a 15-minute presentation and 15 minutes for questions.
30 minutes total?
30 minutes total, and then.
And that's, I know in Congress and in Olympia, during session, that's the amount of time you get with the elected official. You get 15-minute appointments, so they should be well-versed in covering all of their information quickly.
As I see on the first page, yeah, you've got it at 20, 25, and 15. So if we do 15,
15.
And then probably just 10 minutes in between.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I was.
So kind of 40-minute apart for interviews?
Yeah, 40, 45, just to be safe and then time it. I mean, my concern is that we may have to look at it Tuesday afternoon after the 2 o'clock, just because we're pretty full up on any time that we have on Mondays and Tuesdays.
When we talked yesterday about the meeting, right now you've got Monday blocked, and it was in anticipation of this.
Oh.
So you've got Monday blocked and available for you. We don't need the entirety for budget workshops. So we figured we'd use the rest of it for that. That's
okay.
Jail capacity plan.
Well, and I guess the question is with 3 people, probably just interview all 3.
That's the question. So I did sign my form, and so I got the verbs.
Look at you.
So, I mean, they're all well-known, in my view, qualified firms, spending 30 seconds glancing through each application, but they are bona fide, well-known firms. So from that perspective, I think interviewing all 3 would make sense.
Yeah.
However, Victor would still need your preliminary scores from the RFP before the interviews. Is that correct?
So once we go in and sign the form, then this stuff gets emailed to us, and then there's a scoring sheet. Okay.
You'll recall that 40, 40, 20.
Right, yeah, the percentages.
So
Right.
that was part of the RFP, so we need to honor our RFP process. So you would score it, but the way the RFP was written, that scoring, if you got 20 applications, that's what would narrow it down. But we still need to go through the process, although your final decision is based on.
Right, because,
The way the RFP went out, Victor, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not an averaging of scores. The first scores, we just need to do it. If somebody does a PRR, we need to be able to provide the data, and especially on things like this, it's often for a losing firm. They just kind of want to see what they could do better for the next
right, because I guess
application.
the initial scoring was just to identify who was gonna, would just allow us to, so, okay, so then that initial scoring, however we score it, if we're gonna choose to interview all three of these people, then that stops.
Carries
And
forward.
now it does carry forward.
So we still,
I guess
if
that's
you guys
very
want to
strange.
interview next Monday, we would ask that you get your scores to Victor, what, Friday by noon?
Friday,
Do you have-
that'd be great. Right, close of business on Friday.
If I'm not mistaken, the scoring was based on the RFQ response, then the interview, and then pricing, right? There's 3 components.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't see pricing until the very end.
Okay, and the score sheet is,
It'll be in the packet on the link.
Could I interject real quick for clarification? The initial scores were set up if there were a large amount of proposals, you could shortlist. There's usually a leader, a group shortly behind, and then a lower group that can be, but since there's 3, and you said that it's possible to do that, the scores are important to show your evaluation as you go in and score. You'll know going in, this is my number 1 rank, number 2, number 3. And the interviews will either confirm or show some difference, as they often do. But the scores themselves, once you get to the interview, are set aside and you will rank them or vote. This is our number 1, this is number 2. And based on that ranking, that's how the reward will be. It won't be on those initial scores.
okay, I guess that's what I was trying to
Yes.
figure out. So then, in some ways, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the point of doing the initial scoring if we know we're already shortlisting the 3 that are eligible? Since there's only 3 eligible.
It's the due diligence of reviewing, and there could be something that points out someone has scored very low. But until you go in and evaluate and associate scores with them, you won't have that knowledge of their experience moving forward. And there might be questions that come out of that evaluation that you might want to bring up in the interview for clarification.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to go through the process, go and look and see and all of that, but there's just, if we need to score or not. Just because as those scoring becomes a public record, and if we're already choosing all 3, then do you want that public record? I mean, since it really doesn't matter, but I guess that's what I'm just trying to figure out. Commissioner French?
Well, and I think I know where you're heading, Madam Chair, and I agree with you. If the initial was to whittle it down to 3, then the question is, with this round of scoring, is there a possibility we could whittle it down to 2? One of the 3 might be eligible to be dropped off if they didn't get enough scores compared to the other 2.
Yes, but not if you're on a timeline for next Monday. I don't know when you would come back to make that
Right, so that's
decision.
why I'm kind of like, is there a point to having the initial scoring since we're just saying
No.
we're gonna go with all 3?
I agree with you 100%, and that's why I was trying to reshape the question to see if there was room.
Commissioner, the only concern is invitations should go out today because the option for them to show up in person is going to be offered with the intention that it will be virtual. But if they want to appear in person, booking flights.
But I think we're in agreement that we wanna interview all three.
Yes.
I think it's just, since we didn't do that initial scoring, I mean, you guys did the pre-qualification. All three people met the qualification, we're gonna interview all three equally. It doesn't mean that we're not gonna go back and look at what they turned in and all of that, because it will help guide us on additional questions that we may have. Do we need to have, I don't know, Al, help me if I'm not saying it right, do we need to have that additional screening? Because there's nothing for anybody to come back to us at, because we agreed to have all three of them move forward.
What was pointed out earlier was, after the fact, if a debrief is requested or a protest, we would need to show.
Well, we're letting all three of them move forward. So if there is a protest, we put them all on equal standing at this point in time.
As Jeff stated earlier, this is a highly unusual solicitation. I would have to ask legal, is scoring necessary at this point, or is an evaluation with information that you bring into the interview enough without scoring, since all three are moving forward?
And either way is fine. So no, you do not need, in order to, you're legally gonna be just fine without the scoring ahead of an interview.
So, okay, so then if we don't need to do that, I think we all need to look at them though and come up with, and Commissioner French, this is gonna be to your point, is there a way for us to come up with questions that we wanna make sure that they're providing in the presentation, which we need to do very quickly if this is Monday or Tuesday, whichever day. Can we do that timely? What do you think, Commissioner French? I see you. Look at you. We actually see you. Hello.
Yeah, I agree with where you're going, Madam Chair. I think you're dead on right. It's kind of like, rescoring to the game's already over. I mean, what's the purpose? You already know what the score is. So I'm wondering if this is just make work for us to CYA as opposed to actually being productive exercise. So I just,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think we're to the point where I think we can, because in my mind, it's actually better for us at this point, since we're moving all three forward, not to score, because then nobody can come back at us and say we scored them down and then we, somebody was higher and we're just saying they're all in equal standing. We're going to move all three of them forward. But on the presentation side, if the presentation is going to be, is it Monday or Tuesday?
Haven't scheduled it yet. We set aside Monday from yesterday's conversation in anticipation of thinking this would be on Monday.
So if this is on Monday and we're trying to get them here, and I agree with you where it'd be great if we had questions that we want them to cover in the presentation, but I don't know if we can get that done in time.
There's not enough time.
At some level, though, they know what we want. They're professionals at this. I mean, I could make the case, if they don't bring it, it's not who you want. Just throwing that out there as an idea that they've done these many times.
Okay.
You just simply tell them, present to us what's in your RFQ proposal. And then
And why they're the right firm for this job and what they will help with.
So just to be clear on everything, we're going to sign the form so we can get access to the RFPs, just like Commissioner French has already done. Then we can all have access to the RFPs. We're not going to do a scoring at this point in time on those. We will take those and make our own questions and comments that we want to make sure we ask after they present. If we have further questions that they don't answer, that each one of us individually has, I mean, then those are questions we can ask.
You could ask as a follow-up to something they
As-
brought up, or if it
yes.
comes under your scope of work, which is broad enough, I think anything would fit, if it's a legitimate question.
So I think as we all go through those applications, we'll have our own questions that we will be able to follow up with if they don't answer them during the presentation. So I think at this point, we'll just go forward with the interviews. We'll fill out the form to get access, and everyone gets to do their own work to make sure they're prepared for the interviews.
So what time on Monday?
I can follow up with that.
What, do you want 9 o'clock, starting at 9 o'clock, or do you want these to start at 1 o'clock, 2
A
o'clock?
couple of the firms, if they zoom in, will likely be East Coast time, just for consideration of time zones.
I would be flexible, so that way, I mean, just because we're kind of putting them on a time crunch to be doing this in less than a week. So whatever time they want to do, and then we can fill in on Monday.
Okay.
That's what we need to.
So like anytime between 9 and noon and fill in other stuff around it, or the afternoon also, because we do.
I
have
would say the
that.
afternoon also, just.
So anytime on Monday.
But it is
After
exec
9 a.m.
session.
Yes, so to be clear, the interview, asking the questions and discussion of the applicant's qualifications can occur in exec session. Decisions, narrowing down a list, anything like that has to be an open session.
And the main reason to do this in executive session is so whoever goes second and third can't watch the first round and kind of get an edge off of that. It's not like a normal when somebody's applied for a job and their current boss downtown doesn't know it and we're trying to protect that situation. So it's really more around a fairness.
And if we know, I mean, we'll know by Wednesday, when we set the agenda, when we will need to be going in and out of executive session for this purpose.
Would you like any of these bullet points that Victor put together, forwarded them to make sure they cover that in the presentation, just by way of general background?
Commissioner French?
Oh, I was gonna comment on the scheduling. I did send a email requesting time for an executive session for Mr. Crowder, an outside consultant attorney, for Monday or Tuesday of next week and stuff. So I just wanted to remind the chair and Mr. Simmons about that and scheduling.
Okay,
Will do.
thank you. So, and you're okay with on Monday, you know, wherever it fits for them, we'll make it work.
Whatever works. I'll be here.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so are you talking about these bullet points?
Yeah, like, do you want to make sure they do a general, just kind of some of this pro forma, or do you want to just leave it up to them if they think selling themselves on the hill and to the agencies is more important than background? Like, do you want to have Victor give them some definite cover points, or just leave it completely open-ended? I don't think there's a right or wrong, it's just preference.
I don't know, not having seen how they replied to their
Yeah, I need
RFPs.
to look it over.
They all of them go through their staff with individual bios. They cover their other clients. They give examples of
Just all the things that
success and accomplishments. So I feel like most of that basic will be covered as you go through it. So personally, if I were you, having looked at these, I would be comfortable you have 15 minutes to make your pitch.
Yeah, that's what I would say, rather than having additional things and, because like, why your services better than your competition, it's like, when elected, you don't want to talk about your competitors, you want to talk about yourself and all the good things you do. So I don't know, I wouldn't worry about those. I'd be more making sure that as we look through the RFP, we can make sure that if we have additional questions and let them make their pitch.
Is everybody good with that? So it'll be very open-ended, 15 minutes and 15 minutes. We'll offer them start times between 9 a.m. and 3:30 on Monday, Pacific Coast time.
How much time for discussion and a break in between each presentation would you like?
I think we were talking 15, 15, and then 10. So basically 45 minutes total for each.
Okay.
I guess we all have some signing and reading to do.
Yeah, so this front and back. That's all three.
And in closing, if I could just real briefly say that purchasing manager Tony Hall, last day is on Friday, and I just wanted to say here to everyone that I really appreciated his leadership over the last few years, and I've been enjoying his presentations here, and just want to wish him the best.
Thank you, and we do the same. Sad to see him go, but understand that he's got good opportunities ahead of him, so. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you all, and I am done for the day. Taking up your time.
Okay. So,
one, right?
Kevin,
Kevin?
yes.
So when you go in and you sign, you have to print off the PDF.
Or
Sign
you,
it.
or electronically sign it.
I don't, it was a PDF that was sent. You have to have a PDF writer program to do that.
You don't have to. She can just take and place a copy of your please ultimately print it off, then have her send it back, scan it, and send it back to us.
And then Victor will send you a link to the rest of the information. Okay. Sorry, thought it was all inclusive. Got it.
Okay, Kevin, welcome. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Oh, no worries. Today, we're going to be talking about the extension continuance of the jail tracker contract, project number P10038. Along with myself, Shonda Mitrovich, Assistant Director of IT is here for this, Aaron Lynn from Detention Services, and Aaron Anderton from Detention Services as well. What we're looking at is based on the resolution passed back in July of, I believe, 2018, there was language in that resolution that required a briefing of the board and a signature of the board or the board chair to continue to go to the next 5-year agreement with the jail tracker vendor, who is Caliber and is now Colossus. So in that regard, the upcoming costs for the next 5 years total is $622,215. And the first year of that, which starts in November of next month, 2023 through next October, is $112K, 112, 594. All the numbers are shown on the documents that I provided. So that's why we're here, is to discuss that. If you have any questions regarding Jail Tracker, a system that we put in place 5 years ago, Aaron will be glad to answer any of those questions.
And I might mention that in the contract, and I don't know if you've looked at the contract or not, that this was a negotiated 5% increase over the years 6 through 10 that was negotiated back in 2018. I don't think it's going to get any cheaper to continue that maintenance plan. And obviously we have zero interest in replacing that software. It's great software and we get terrific support.
I think that was gonna be my question is, how do you like using it?
Yeah.
Caliber has been one of our best
Someone actually
vendors
likes
to work
software.
with. Yeah, Caliber has been one of the best vendors that we've had to work with from IT's perspective, and we don't deal with them much because they deal directly with Aaron, specifically in detention services.
And you guys like it over in detention services
Yeah,
as
the
well?
functionality is really good. It allows us to basically, that's what we book and release with. We house inmates, we keep track of their behaviors and all the different things at both facilities, and it works really well. We had a system before that didn't work very well, and so we're really happy with this one.
So one of the things that I want to make sure we're considering, and I'm sure you already are, we anticipate under Measure 1, if it passes, we are anticipating to do heavy technology investments as well, because I think, and I don't know exactly what Jail Tracker does, we have a lack of integration between multiple modules that we have, right? So just be thinking about kind of what that next phase of the technology investments are. So we have our transport talking to our jail management module, our healthcare, our health stuff. So we have one place to go versus I think Aaron and Bryce have to go to like 3 different places or something like that, as we think about like fractionalized billing and all. I'm remembering conversations from a couple years ago, Aaron, on
Sure.
systems not talking to each other.
If I recall that correctly, that was when Senior Director Sparber was talking about pricing for services. And Jail Tracker isn't really designed to do that. It has a housing billing module. You bill per inmate per day to a specific agency. If we wanted to do like a cost pricing per service offered, that would be a much more complex effort, but we could look into that. I don't think Jail Tracker would do everything. I'm not sure that there's a system out there that allows for a la carte billing for all of the services provided to an inmate.
Well, I mean, we've got still years to plan, and I'm just flagging it as be thinking about kind of what that next generation software looks like for our needs, if it's this or if it's something more.
And that might be something that we could do with an enhancement to the JTNS, the transport system, and then we could integrate a little more closely with Jail Tracker. I'll make a note of that.
Any other questions or comments?
If we're so pleased with it, does Caliber make other programs? No, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, do we look at, like, do they have a whole suite of things for other areas of local government? I mean, if you guys are raving about this company, I mean, do they make other stuff we should be
They
looking at
do. One of their
purchasing?
flagship projects is an RMS system, but we're moving to Axon with the city of Spokane. So there's already a project underway to do that. And honestly, I wasn't involved in the RFP process or the selection process of that. So I'm not sure how they went about their decision.
Okay.
But I could look into other offerings from them. I'm not sure because the Colossus Group purchased Jail Tracker. It was a individually owned company that was purchased and acquired by this larger company, and they have like many larger companies do, they buy up a lot of different products. That doesn't necessarily mean that they all integrate and communicate and work well together. They potentially have separate software development teams, and I know the Jail Tracker team is a team that has been together working on that software for quite a while, the whole support, and that's why we like it so much, is they have a very deep history of supporting and working in that product. I'm not sure how well that would relate to other offerings from that company.
Understood. Thank you.
I've not seen any other questions.
Good.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for us.
Thank you. Okay, we're 12:30. I know we've got some miscellaneous.
One exec session.
Okay.
One Kevin's here. I've got another one like this afternoon.
Okay, how long?
Along,
I've got one as well.
so I'm gonna do that one this afternoon.
Okay. We should discuss that
Yep.
first.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, and I've got an executive session item too, less than 5 minutes, just an update.
Okay, so we're trying to figure out if we go now or if we go after the 2 o'clock.
Either way is fine for me.
Okay,
Maybe
what can we,
do this one with
Kevin here?
Kevin here, and then wait on the other two so Commissioner Jordan can be.
But you have another one?
Yeah, and I can go this afternoon.
Okay, so we'll do the 3 this afternoon and one today, right now when Kevin's here.
Okay.
And then lunch maybe. Maybe some food.
I know, I've got a 1 o'clock, so.
Early dinner now, I guess.
So that's, so
Okay, so
this,
you gotta state the purpose and all of that.
yeah, and so this one is going to be, this is going to be an exec session pursuant to 4230-110-1A sub 2, which is infrastructure and security of agency computer and telecommunications networks. Those present should be the board, CEO Scott Simmons, myself, the IT team here, Kevin, and
Justin and Sean.
and Casey Evans from my office as well.
Okay, Commissioner Jordan, I can zoom in.
10 minutes.
Is he still here? Yeah. Is that Randy as well?
And Randy Bischoff, Budget Director. This should take approximately 10 minutes and no decisions.
Okay, and I believe Commissioner Jordan just said he would be available by Zoom, so, so we can have him, so do we wanna do he and Alex? Just to only have 2 this afternoon. Okay, how long did you think?
10.
10 minutes? And I apologize, I'm like trying to.
Can I go grab a little hot water?
Yes, yes, good. Go ahead and do that. So the purpose again.
The purpose is to discuss infrastructure and security of agency computer and telecommunications networks. That's under
And any decisions to be made after, you already put it on the record, I'm just.
no decisions.
No decisions, and you state the individuals that would be on. And then Commissioner French, I think Commissioner Jordan can be zooming in, so maybe if he does, can we do your quick 5-minute one, or do you wanna wait till this afternoon?
He's not on.
Okay. Well, then we're not gonna be able to, we'll do this afternoon. Okay. So we are off, we will be going into executive session for 10 minutes. When we are done, we will then convene in the morning and we will reconvene for our 2 o'clock this afternoon. No decisions are expected to be made after executive session, so we will see everybody at 2 o'clock. Thank you.